зацвіт.
З-під вражої охрани втекли два отамани, зірвалися соколики на волю. Поблизу Гуляйполя в пологах зупинились у хаті біля старої верби. Обидва всі в ранах махновські партизани вціліли після розстрілів в Криму. Хильнули трохи смаги, та й пісню затягнули про батька та й про доленьку лиху. Гей, друже, гей, брате, боляче мої рани, а в грудях ще дужче пече. Навіщо, навіщо козацькі отамани москаликам підставили плече? Не вірте червоним, не вірте комунякам, слова їх, що полова на вітру. Ми Врангеля здолали, ми перекопи взяли, за них ми тою виграли війну. За подвиги, за наші чекісти, комісари, могилами віддячили в степу. Було нас 40 тисяч, а стало 8 сотень, що вирвались із пастки у Криму. Гей, друже, гей, брате, скажіть всьому народу, що нам оті москалі не брати. Ми билися за волю, вони за нові тюрми, із Леніним, із Троцьким на чолі.
Кінські роздьори, дібрівські ліси, гайчурські хлопці чистої роси. Свиснеш із дуба, чуть на 3 віки, скрізь мої краяни, махновці, козаки. Ех, розлита воля, гірше із отрут, соловей розбійник народився тут. Ех, не дарма хлопці мед горілку п'ють, соловей розбійник народився тут. Знав Маріуполь, Юзівка і Дон, рейди на Полтаву, Перекоп, Херсон. Коні топтали, зорі мов квітки, ми в степах розстали, ми туман гіркий. Ех, розлита воля, гірша із отрут, соловей розбійник народився тут. Ех, не дарма хлопці мед горілку п'ють, соловей розбійник народився тут. Досі ночами лине грім копит, ген за вітрами дикий степ кипить. Кров'ю без тіла пісня десь блука, сила незнищенна виходу шука. Ех, розлита воля, гірша із отрут, соловей розбійник народився тут. Ех, не дарма хлопці мед горілку п'ють, соловей розбійник народився тут. Ех, розлита воля, гірша із
I'm off to drop the bomb, so don't wait up for me. But while you swelter down there in your shelter, you can watch me on your TV. While we're attacking frontally, watch Brinkley and Huntily describing contrapuntily the cities we have lost. No need for you to miss a minute of the agonizing Holocaust. Yeah! Little Johnny Jones, he was a U.S. pilot, and no shrinking violet was he. He was mighty proud when World War III was declared. He wasn't scared, no siree. And this is what he said on his way to Armageddon. So long, Mom, I'm off to drop the bomb, so don't wait up for me. But though I may roam, I'll come back to my home, although it may be a pile of debris. Remember, Mommy, I'm off to get a commie, so send me a salami and try to smile somehow. I'll look for you when the war is over, an hour and a half from now.
1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. I'm testing. Hope you're all doing well. It is 7:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4:17 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2:17 a.m. in the general Kiev area. We're going to be jumping straight into a conversation with a Trump voter. They might argue that point, but they say they'd vote for Trump in a swing state. They just happen to not be in a swing state. So in principle, they are a Trump voter, and we're going to be talking to them about that continued position despite 8 months of the Trump presidency. Hey, look, it's Vivian Wolf. It's Vivian Wolf. Jeb Tan, in fact, told me that Donald Trump has exceeded his expectations in every way, and that he wants him to have a third term, which, I mean, went much further than I expected, but we're going to talk about that in a second. I wonder if we should just call him directly and just jump straight into it. Just call him directly. Let's get it right underway. Hello. 1 second. Let me change my audio because I cannot hear you currently. My goodness. You could be saying very intelligent things right now, and I would be missing absolutely all of it. Okay, say something.
Something really intelligent.
Whoa. I knew you had it in you. I knew it.
Right?
Okay.
Here,
Let me put you up here. How have you been, Jeb? How have you been since the 2016 election? And why are you... There you go. I was supposed to ask you, why are you an angel covered in light?
It's every time I open my camera in a new, like in a software for the first time, it makes me re-click into Longitude to get my exposure set correctly. I don't know why it does that, but...
I see. 1 second. Moving my stuff on screen. So how has the last 8 months been for you?
I mean, good for me, man. I mean, I don't buy a lot of stuff from China, so it hasn't been too big of a deal for me. I mean, obviously we see a lot of the ICE stuff rolling through kind of my area, but it hasn't been the horror scene I've had described to me about what it's like here when they don't know that I'm here. But, you know, friends with illegal family members are obviously not stoked about it. Oop, I can't.
I'm sorry.
hear you.
Sorry.
You're not
How do I spell your first name, Jeb?
Jeb.
Could you give that to me one more time?
Jeb.
Okay.
With ICE. Okay.
J as in job.
Yeah.
O as in Obama.
Not O. E.
Oh, so E. Then B, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now I have it on screen, and I won't make
There
that
we go.
mistake again. So welcome to today's show, Jeb. Who are you? Why do I know you? Why are you on my show?
You know me because you're the reason I exist on the internet. So take whatever, commensurate
Is
punishment
that
comes with
true?
that.
Is that a
Pretty
fact?
much.
I'm the
I
reason
made
you
a Twitch
exist.
account for Hippy Dippy. So kind of.
Wow. So every panel booking, every opinion you've ever had on the internet is actually my fault.
Yeah, it's all downstream from Dylan. That's what I say whenever anybody doesn't like an opinion.
Got it. So anybody that's frustrated by today's conversation should get angry at me first, right?
Yeah, on my Twitter it says these views do reflect the opinion of my employer, Dylan Burns.
Employer, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
and the benefits were always great, weren't they?
Yep.
Yeah,
You
fantastic.
take
I
care of
always
your
thought
people.
so. Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at that house. That house is funded 100% by Dylan dollars.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, so
But yeah.
we haven't talked since the election. Now, you didn't vote for Trump.
No.
But you did say that you would have voted for Trump if you were in a swing state like Florida, Georgia, or somewhere where your vote probably mattered outside of, well,
Yeah.
it just being another number.
Exactly. Like where a vote for Trump would actually be a vote against Kamala Harris. Whereas in my state, no matter what I vote, it's not a vote against Kamala Harris because she was going to win the state.
Now, I know that a lot of the concerns that I had about Trump, you shared. And so you didn't eagerly go out and vote for Trump. You voted third party, I believe, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I
But
voted Chase Oliver.
you would prefer Trump over Harris once it came down to it. I don't know if you would have preferred Trump over Biden, over second term Biden, but I'll make that assumption as well from the nod. And so I remember talking about many of my concerns around Ukraine, many of my concerns about Trump's seeming lack in faith in democracy, Trump's lack of respect for electoral results, about the people who was in his inner circle. And we had these conversations, and I know you remember some of these conversations on election night. And we talked about like how we would, how we would check up. And so it's been 8 months, been going on 9. How would you say Trump is doing in relation to the concerns that we expressed during that panel?
I mean, pretty much how we expected in sort of the regular presidential regards in terms of still being an idiot and still doing everything he can to maneuver outside of legal frameworks without being stopped, not necessarily without breaking the law, because a lot of MAGA people will be like, well, he uses legal tools. It's like, no, he's very much trying to maneuver outside of the law without getting stopped. He's not worried about whether or not he's actually doing something illegal. He's worried about whether he'll be stopped as a result of it. With Ukraine, I would say he's kind of fallen in the middle. I wasn't buying that he was going to end the conflict in 3 days. But he didn't completely abandon Ukraine. He might have. There's an argument that he landed in between our positions. There's also an argument he landed even worse than your position because of how inconsistent he's been. I'm of the mind where, at least the continued sending of arms in some capacities during some Trump moods is better than none. But I think some Ukrainians might argue that they would rather a clear picture of US's participation in the future, good or bad, over what's been going on. Let's see. Economically, he's done so much worse than I thought. I don't think he's crashed the economy the way people are saying, but it's just like he's just done things that have not needed to happen and prioritized things that did not need to be prioritized.
A lot of presidential mess making. A lot of a lot of it he could have just ridden. And he decided to just get in there and start doing stuff, which is now being ruled unconstitutional by the court. So we don't even know if he had the legal authority to do what he did. Probably not.
Probably not. I'm in support of both of those decisions. I also think the one reason I can point to that's just irrefutable from any side of the political spectrum that just proves that Trump's presidency has been a failure is the lack of a border bill. I mean, it was the easiest slam dunk. The Democrats had completely politically committed themselves to taking the border seriously and being willing to pass some border legislation. Right, his sort of idea that he gave to his base was, we're just going to do it under me so I can get the credit for it, and it can be stronger and it can be more Republican and it can actually mess with the asylum. As far as I know, nothing has even hit a vote in that regard. So it's a failure top down within the GOP that like a border bill hasn't been even put out, and anyone saying that like, oh, it wouldn't have passed, I don't think that's necessarily true. Um, I think you already had some built-in support in the Democrat Party with guys like Fetterman, and you just had a Democrat Party who had really overextended themselves on the issue. So I think honestly they would have had to, as long as it wasn't wildly unreasonable, they would have had to support something. So that was also a big failure. For me, the reason why I would still probably have voted against Biden and Kamala is a couple on principle things. The first one mainly being a Biden essentially promised, and I believe that Kamala would follow through on this, to implement another assault weapons ban. And the Democrats continue to push it. And at the end of the day, when it comes to things that are so lasting as that versus Trump's things that are sort of falling on their face, and him winning is actually keeping him from being able to run again, I see Trump as a sort of self-healing problem where his own hilarity and ridiculousness is going to solve the problem of MAGA and the GOP in the long term. Whereas if Biden and Harris came in, we would probably have gotten another assault weapons ban, and it would have probably led to, I mean, it's a second term from Biden, so I can only assume, even though it's under Kamala, I can only assume that it's going to be bolder than the first, which included a lot of spending bills, and included pretty aggressive investment in places I didn't think we needed to invest in, and things with a lot more lasting impact than I think a shitty tariff policy. And then the other thing about Trump was the deportations, which I supported those. So that's sort of something that I'm neutral to. I think he did it in a very dumb way, and he's not very good at it, but that I'm not seeing mass deportations of illegal immigrants and being like, now I wish I didn't say I would vote for him, you know?
Okay, so can I just start wherever I want, or is there a specific area you would want me to touch on first?
No, whatever matters
Okay,
most.
you know what? Let's start unconventional, because I think most people, when they talk about elections, they just talk about the man, but a lot of people don't realize there's also the people around them. I mean, like Mike Pence ended up being a pretty consequential figure in the history of first-term Trump, even though in the grand scheme of things, nobody was voting in the 2016 election off of Mike Pence being vice president or being the guy that'll reel Trump in. But at the end of the day, he was the man who kind of stopped him in his tracks when he tried to take us all on the crazy train after January 6th. Or around January 6th. So I would say that the people around him, which might even do as much, if not more damage than the man himself, have been consequential failures. And we're still learning every day more and more information about the type of people that are getting appointed across the board in thousands and thousands of positions across the country as career civil servants are laid off. And Jeb, you have turned
I'm just
into...
switching. Yeah, I'm switching things up with my camera so that I won't lose my exposure.
I'll just give a few examples, because I don't think there's really a usefulness in me like going down the list of like, hey, in these crucial positions, look at this person posting Russian disinformation, or look at this person who's clearly unqualified. Even though many of those cases exist, I'll just stay at the top echelons. The big cojones, because I remember on the night of the election talking to you other people saying, Tulsi Gabbard, I'm worried that people like her could get appointed. People said, oh no, that won't happen. But now we have Tulsi Gabbard. Let's start with her. She was completely unqualified for the position of any intelligence. And not even just intellectually, but of course, when it comes to intel gathering, she doesn't have any experience in the intelligence community. She doesn't have any experience managing intelligence. She only has a very short stint coming from the armed forces where she personally received intelligence. And so I was worried putting her as the top intelligence official in the country when her main job was going to be preparing the president's presidential daily brief to interpret information and give it to him, when she has, besides the fact no experience, a terrible record of judging information, saying like the bio labs in Ukraine were a legitimate motivator for the Russians. Any other moments of just terrible judgment, either in relation to the Assad regime or over and over again in relation to Ukraine, like the idea of if Obama just discussed Russia's security concerns with them, this entire war could have been avoided. Completely looking at the Russians like Samir Shaimarin, like, oh, it was merely we just got too close to their backyard, not thinking about them as an independent entity with their own beliefs, their own systems. Her job is to interpret intelligence and give it to the president. And when we have the president coming out and saying Ukrainian troops got encircled around Kursk, whose job is it to correct that? Whose job is it to go in there and make sure that the president doesn't think thousands of troops in Europe have just gotten circled and, oh God, we have to change our negotiating. The Russians are so more powerful now. It's her job to get through the bluff. It's her job to get through the bullshit that's thrown at the president, and she's done a terrible job at that. But moreover, she's also done a terrible job at managing information. She recently revealed an undercover agent to the public after not coordinating it with John Ratcliffe over at the CIA, releasing 37 names, including somebody who was actively undercover. And once you reveal somebody who's actively undercover, it's fucked. You gotta, like, the operation shut down. You can't go back in there. Whatever information you gathered or whatever operation you, no matter how close you were, you have to pull them out because they could be in danger. And she's just doing that from a lack of experience. So she's got no experience. She's bringing nothing to the table. And she's not, like, as far as I can tell, making the president take in better information. I think she's a disaster for the position, especially you and I both know her beliefs are completely off our rocker and not with our country's interests.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in some part, for sure. I don't know all of her beliefs regarding all conflicts, but I know a few that I'm not a fan of. I'm not sure how big the, like, pro-Assad hoopla was. That was kind of the big meme when she was getting put in, and I think people focus too much on that.
No, wait. I focus on it a lot because that made her a bastard. Yeah. And I'm saying that not to be mean, just to say that she condemned the rebels and said that we should work with the Russians and stop condemning the Russians after they bombed a bunch of hospitals because it was bad of us to do it. We should instead bomb with them. We should bomb the terrorists. Some of them would be Islamists, others would be rebels, others would be just people the Assad regime needs to butcher.
Exactly.
We should work with them. Targeted. Like that's not even like, oh, Assad's not that bad. That's let's do Assad's work for him. And so if she's not just saying, oh, I don't care. I'm used to the people on these panels saying, why do I give a fuck about the foreigner? I'm used to that. What I'm not used to is having the top intelligence official being somebody who said, let's bomb with Assad.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, sorry. To be clear, people were saying that she is like a committed, bought-in ideologically Assad, like pro-Assad person.
I'm not saying she's like an Assadist, as in she believes like she's part of. I don't think she's Alawite. I don't believe so.
And that's why I wanted to clarify that I wasn't criticizing you because I didn't see a ton of your coverage on it. But like this, the prevailing idea I saw when she was coming around was that she was like an Assad plant essentially. In that she was so ideologically bought into supporting Assad that she would make the U.S. more pro-Assad as like an intended goal. I think his appointments have been generationally terrible. You can look top down. I know.
Did you say during their election night stream you expected them to be that terrible? Because I remember hearing the same tone the first time and the second time around during that stream. I remember the tone, and it was, "Don't worry. The foreign policy experts will manage most of this. Trump wants to just kind of gulp and like have the legacy."
I didn't think that Tulsi would get confirmed. I was surprised people confirmed her. I thought she was the most likely of the three to get confirmed. But they ended up confirming RFK too. And the three that I knew at that point wouldn't get confirmed were Gates, RFK, and Tulsi. So I was just super wrong on that prediction. Because the RFK one has been arguably as destructive or more, in my opinion, more destructive. Because I know for you, the foreign policy is number one. For me, it's primarily about what's going on here and specifically what's going on here on a lasting basis. And I would argue the person who's done the most lasting damage under the Trump admin thus far has been RFK, because he is taking part in like the gutting of, medical research. He's trying to hit vaccines now, which he wasn't going to do. He wasn't going to be anti-vax, according to him and according to Trump and according to a bunch of MAGA people who supported him. It's still one of the most ridiculous appointments I've ever seen in my life, if not the most. And like, I think they're fucking insane. the
What
issue
about
for me
the
is-
autism research? They say that this is the month we're supposed
Yeah.
to discover what causes autism.
Yep. We're gonna get down to it, guys. And the unfortunate thing is it's gonna be probably some one-page memo that gets released that they give no publicity to, where they say
Play less
just
video
like
games.
yeah, it was just like the what was the other thing? Just recent. It was just like the Epstein shit, where it's gonna be some one-page thing they try to give no attention to, like, oh, you know what? Actually, it wasn't that big of a deal. And then they try to move on, like it wasn't like a major thing he said he was gonna conquer, sort of coming in. RFK is a fucking generational idiot. I think he's the one doing the most lasting damage. Hegseth is obviously, not good. He's an idiot. He can't. I saw him and RFK's little fitness thing, and I was like, man, he can't even do a pull up. We got the Secretary of Defense that can't even do a pull up, and it was just like, aesthetically, I don't get what the benefit was, and that seemed to be the only reason Trump went with him, was the aesthetic benefit of having like the Chad.
He wanted an
Sec
attack
def,
dog. He wanted somebody who would
Yeah.
go on because before I think maybe he trusted the people in like maybe in positions like, oh, this guy's tough, Mad Dog Mattis. He's like, oh, I like to name Mad Dog. But then it's like,
Yeah.
wait, but this isn't a talker. He's not on TV telling me how I'm great bomb and
Nope.
everything. Hegseth was a talker. He had never managed other soldiers before. He had never been in a military leadership
No.
position. He had been in a private leadership position in a small business of a few hundred people, not of the largest the most powerful armed force to ever exist of over 800,000 people across the Defense Department. But, it's a bit of an upgrade. He's also done just a terrible job. I hear reports of the culture around him of just a constant looking for leaks and the paranoia, which is almost certainly not good. I also know that he doesn't seem to bring a bunch of strategic knowledge to the table. And the thing that really sucks for me is that he seems to be doing the cardinal sin of the Trump movement, and nobody gives a fuck. The cardinal sin is don't undermine Trump. The cardinal sin is from the first term, I was told Trump was dumb and gay and all of his legislating. Okay, if I'm talking to like a far righty, and I'm like, come on, what happened to this?
Sure, yeah.
He's like, well, the bump stock and of this and of that. Well, it was all dumb and gay because the elites around him controlled him, and the never Trumpers had wiggled their way in, and the rhinos, those dastardly
Trump alone
rhinos.
he never would have done that one on his own.
But this time he got his kids to go trophy hunting. They made the rhino go extinct, and there's no more in the administration. This time it's going to be full loyalty. And to a large extent, the full loyalty thing has largely panned out. I remember talking to people before who thought kind of like, and in most ways, I think it's panned out.
In his cabinet, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
in his cabinet. But Pete Hegseth, whether or not he declares himself loyal, whether or not he goes out in public and does X, Y, and Z, if the president of the United States is trying to bring an end to a major war, and they're trying to use leverage to bring an end to a major war, and they're saying how tough they are, how this and how that they are, and they are trying to send some signal to the Russians to make them think it would be more worthwhile to take a seat and negotiate an end rather than continuing on this bloodshed. The last thing you do is randomly freeze arms shipments. And Pete Hegseth didn't try to do this once. He didn't try to do this twice. He didn't try to do this 3 times. He did this 4 times. It's just the only times that it got media coverage, and 2 times it did, were the 2 times it went through. He was blocked the other times. It's just the 4th time they didn't catch him, and it went through. And I could see on the president's face when he was talking to the press and they were telling him about the arm freeze. He's like, what do you mean we're sending arms to Ukraine? He was confused. He didn't know what was going on in his own administration. He's getting undercut by people in his administration. He then defends those people who undercut him in order to save face. Because I don't think he wants to have another national security advisor situation. I mean, giving that over to Marco Rubio certainly wasn't the original plan.
No. I mean, he doesn't want to, right? His whole big thing was, Biden puppet presidency, right? And all these people could undermine him because he wasn't aware, he wasn't sharp, he wasn't paying attention, which was true, but it's like, it's very much seemingly true of the Trump presidency as well. And the only argument I've heard in Hegseth's favor has been from my active duty and veteran friends, and they're saying like, well, it's good for morale, like the people love him. I'm like, yeah, but you guys love him because you voted for Trump. Like you guys don't love him because like he did, and they're like, yeah, we've seen him. I've never seen a Secretary of Defense in person, but one of my friends was like, I saw him in person. I'm like, yeah, you did, but like, so like I'm sure.
Sounds like my grandmother talking about Steny Hoyer. I met his dog.
Yeah, and it's just like, people, but again, I kind of am eating it up and I'm kind of loving it because it's like a mass fatigue. It's like if you want to make a kid, hate soda, force them to drink 4 liters of it in a day. It's like finally give these fat fucking children what they want in the most potent dose for 4 years. And it is creating the most profound MAGA fatigue I've ever seen in my life.
If what we want is like a bro dude who accepts warrior culture, then skip Hegseth. Just go get like Defense Secretary Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like at that point, just like skip all the like, get somebody who's a veteran. To get somebody who just go up there and yell. What's that? The president from Idiocracy. Get that dude. Get Terry Crews to dress up like him. Make him Defense Secretary and have him do a little dance in the White House every once in a while and let that be the Defense Secretary and have an undersecretary in a suit who knows what he's doing. Have it be some retired Pentagon official who has an idea of what he's doing. But we can't have Pete Hegseth getting dragged around by a leash by his understudies around him who have more knowledge because they're nerds like Elbridge Colby, but are people who are very, very misguided, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, once you get into that Elbridge General, you're getting into people whose name I have not heard because I'm not that expert in the area. But no, like 100%. My main positives of this presidency is one, it's domestically pretty inept. The damage has been pretty limited due to the inability of them to get a whole lot done. And the courts standing strong, as I figured they would. I've agreed with damn near every Supreme Court decision that has come out in the past 8 months. And the ones I haven't aren't the ones people are going to think. It's not the immunity decision. I agree with them on that too. I think that existed. If we want that removed, I would support a constitutional amendment, clarifying what presidential immunity extends to, but I think that was our understanding. But my spins on this presidency, the things that make me feel good about it is one, Trump can't run again. And the courts have been holding strong and he won't be able to run again. And the MAGA fatigue is so profound and accelerated. This idea that Vance is just going to come in and be Trump 3. One, I don't think he will come in and be very successful in the GOP once Trump is gone and they don't feel the need to actively cater to him. I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors in terms of support for Vance. And two, I think even if Vance was successful, I think the moment Trump's gone, these people are going to fucking abandon this Trumpism bullshit. From every reliable source that I've heard from friends working in campaigns, people who work in DC with like activist organizations that work alongside people in the Trump administration, and just conservative people in general, there's this tone of we're tired of it, and internally, kind of in the DC world, we just sort of have to wait this out and not get too aggressive because he will then do even more whack shit if he realizes that everybody's going to abandon all of his initiatives the moment he's out the door.
Look, I agree with you to the extent that most people are fucking sick of it, including many of the people who might have first been like, hey, I'm in for a change. But I live in the DC area. I was born and raised in here. I'm connected to DC through the metro system. People might be tired of it, but also, we're just going to huddle down and get through it. No. That's not the feeling of a lot of these people. A lot of these people are throwing their hands in the air and they're saying, fuck it. I've dealt with this shit for over a decade. I was dealing with it in my 40s. Now I'm in my 50s. I don't want to deal with this into my 60s. I'm going to go get a higher paying job in the private sector than rather continue working for the public sector and continue these jobs. And I know people at the NIH who have gotten laid off. I know people who have taken the offer and then immediately they were offered their jobs back, because the administration didn't realize who they were gutting when Doge was just going around with a meat cleaver after a bunch of interns would be sent to these buildings asking 40-year-old veterans of their industry, justify your existence to me. Can you
explain that in fewer words? ChatGPT,
can you just say it to ChatGPT? He'll organize your thoughts for you.
What I'm saying is
this knowledge, when these people go, it's not as simple as just, okay, Trump's gone, everybody. Smurfs, come out of the woodwork, come out of the bushes. Gargamel has left. they've gone off and continued with their lives. People are moving out of the DC area. Restaurants in this area, I'm in gorgeous Prince George's. Restaurants are down because people don't got the money anymore. People are moving. A lot of the like agricultural research buildings and other locations getting shut down and moved out of the area is having like a really demonstrable impact on a lot of these civil servants. And a lot of them are not going to move out to fucking Kentucky to do the agricultural research that they were able to do right next to DC that the legislators could go visit. And a lot of these decisions, a lot of this haphazard mismanagement, it's going to take like, it could take like a decade or more in order to regain that institutional experience and knowledge. Definitely when it comes to the amount of people who are getting picked up by the Eurocucks and by the and by Asia when it comes to the research and the grants.
Scientists and research is going to be one of the, that's why I was saying RFK is the one who's probably done the most lasting damage. But no, what I'm talking about, I'm talking about political operatives in terms of how dedicated they are to the MAGA cause once he's gone. I wasn't talking necessarily as much about like the individual agency staff. I'm talking about people have this idea that Trump's going to leave. They have the idea that Trump's not going to leave. You have Gavin Newsom going out and saying he's confident that there won't be an election in 2028. And then you have people who are like, even if Trump does leave, it's going to be Vance and it's going to be Trump too. Or everybody's still going to be cucked to Trump because he's going to be, tweeting from his house, deciding all the elections in the GOP. That's what I'm saying isn't going to happen. What I'm saying is most people who are staying the course in politics in the GOP are ready to quite literally immediately abandon MAGA initiatives and also kind of tar and feather people, your MAGA, dyed in the wool people that have sort of infected the party because they are all fucking massively hated by both sides of the political spectrum. I wasn't as much talking about like there is no potential for lasting damage throughout any of the agencies. I agree with that. I'm pretty close with a couple people in the research sector who have been talking about it where they're like, listen, we're getting emails already. This has happened before when we cut research and Europe, tried to take scientists from the US. It didn't tend to work because the research came right back. And they're like, but no one's really that confident in coming back while Trump is still president because they don't know if their shit's going to get cut off again. And this time Europe actually has the money to compete. Whereas before Europe didn't have enough money to make it so tantalizing that you wouldn't take a chance at staying at home. And so I think that is definitely going to be an issue. I think we'll get them back, but it'll take a long time. Cancer research took a massive hit. Those are the people that I know are cancer researchers, and that's taken a big hit. His battle with UCLA has been catastrophic in that regard, because those are the people I know as people who are doing cancer research at UCLA. And like that stuff will take time to come back from for sure. But what I'm saying is the GOP politically is ready to abandon Trump, and I have not been so confident of that until now, basically, until Trump got elected, and within 2 months, it was like the tone had completely changed in terms of how much lasting support for MAGA there was. They were like actual dyed-in-the-wool bought and MAGA people are very few and far between now in DC, whereas they were an infestation at one point, and during the Biden presidency.
So I think the risk of Trump 3 is significant. And I think Trump 3 offers different risks than Trump 1 or 2. Not Trump running for a third term necessarily.
Yeah,
I think that
via Vance,
there's a possibility that in his delusional grandeur, he might try to go for it anyway, and therefore trigger a crisis in and of itself, since he won't have the constitutional ability to switch up the term limit. But I mean, it's not like those limitations have mattered for him before. And I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, what happened on January 6th was crazy. Everything that led up to January 6th was crazy. The fact that he sat there on the couch and watched it happen and had Rudy keep calling the legislators, all of that is insane. That's the use of like physical intimidation to try to get legislators to flip over to your side. So while I'll say it's unlikely, I can't really take anything off the table with Trump. And what I care about, like I could get into any of these sections. Like I could get back and forth with you, and we probably agree that any of the 2-week deadlines Trump put forward, or any of all this mess in the negotiation process,
those when they came out.
Absolute goddamn shit show. Right? Or I could talk about how the Congo deal is falling apart, or we can go domestically and we could talk about any of the scams that he's currently running, or we could talk about how shady the crypto shit is, or we could talk about any of the other things that are happening. But everybody's, and I believe this, of course not everyone will agree with me, but I think everybody's main priority should also be the continuation of the state. We have the longest running
Yeah.
constitution in the history of any country on the planet. And while we don't really marvel at that, considering how our national identity is, or like our ethnic identity, or whatever you would want to call it, is relatively young compared to some other European nations or Western nations we are
Yeah, it doesn't
culturally
feel
close
that
with.
old, but
Our constitution, our system of government, the continuance of it through such a long period, with like where we can point to this leader went to this leader, went to this leader, where there isn't clashes where people can say, oh, well, no, this is a legitimate system of government. That is
Yeah.
something that's special about the United States. And if somebody threatens that like 5%, 3%, 7%, if I want to pass something down to my kids, that's a high enough a percentage point that that threat needs to be eliminated, either by being made politically irrelevant, or if they
Yeah.
try to act upon something unconstitutionally, removed from the ability to even interact with the system. Because, for example, impeachment can stop you from like formally being removed from
Yeah.
office can stop you from running again. And so once Trump did what he did on January 6th, I think there's a part of me that says that should have been the end of it. That should have been the end of his participation in politics. That he showed himself to be too dangerous. But Mitch McConnell, divided on the matter, decided otherwise at the time, and now we're living with the consequences. I understand that you say that there might not be a big chance of Trump 3, but there wasn't a big chance of Trump 1, and there wasn't necessarily the biggest chances of Trump 2, considering he was a convicted felon who had like a rap sheet of quite a length and enough political scandals to fill a bibliography like 3 or 4 times. But now
I don't know
the
if I see
idea
it
of
that way,
Trump
'cause
3, the risk of it, I think, is significant enough. And definitely if you put somebody in there who might have some of the knowledge that Trump lacks, but the same type of malice.
Sure. My issue is I live in a kind of different reality than that, in the sense that even at my age, I was, I think, 18 or whatever when Trump 1 came about. It was the first election I could vote in. I was pretty confident Trump was going to win and Trump won. I was also pretty confident he was going to win. I mean, I was predicting it for almost a year leading up to the election, that Trump was going to win pretty handily this election too. I don't see this as like even remotely similar in odds, because this is something that he's effectively tried to do in part, so many different ways, and gotten shut down every single time. So the idea that he's just somehow going to pull it out at the end and completely land the plane on it, it's not. I want to be clear that I don't even see it as a 3 to 5% chance. I see it as a less than 1% chance, significantly less than 1% chance.
You can't say that confidently. That feels like hubris to me. To say that so confidently, and not only to say that so confidently, to say that so confidently 3 years out from the election, before we know who the Democrats are going to run. What do you do if they run Nancy Pelosi? What do you tell me if you have no clue who they're going to run? You have no clue who's going to end up being the nominee. You have no clue if it's even going to be JD Vance, or if it's going to end up being somebody that might be even, maybe even smarter than JD Vance, a better campaigner than JD Vance. I mean, we've never even seen JD Vance run for president before. We don't know how he would really perform. We've seen him run for vice president. I don't think that he's necessarily a campaign love bug or a teddy bear that every American like sits on their couch. I don't see that. But I'm also to say that with so much confidence, considering what the stakes would be if we went from one term Trump, another term JD Vance, he gets more Supreme Court appointments, the type of power somebody following in Trump's footsteps.
You're tempting me to vote for JD Vance at that point. But like,
what do you mean I'm tempting you to vote for JD Vance because he gets to pick Supreme Court appointments? You think he would be a good person to pick that?
I mean, if Trump was, then he was, and Trump did a really good job with his Supreme Court appointments. I love all of Trump's Supreme Court appointments. So, I mean, if we're just going off Supreme Court appointments, that would be probably the one irrefutable positive that I would say. I'm so glad Trump was president at one point.
I don't know if we need to. I don't know if it's a smart idea to go down Amy Coney Barrett or any of these people talk about whether they're great Supreme Court appointments. This is what I will say. Donald Trump stretches the system. That's how he only stops when someone tells him to stop. He does what he wants when he wants, and his lawyers are not people that are like how you would say legal authorities going after what is some type of legal principle that Donald Trump obtains. It is, I want to do this, find me the way to do it. That's how he talked about the Muslim ban back in the day. That's what he talks about politics today. So he stretches the system to its limits. Putting somebody like JD Vance in his position, considering all of the crazy shit that JD Vance has said before, the type of stuff he has said, and to justify Trump's action when it comes to the election, and the fact that he would have done what Mike Pence was at least American enough not to do. I think that's dangerous enough that, you know, we shouldn't have even put the possibility on the table with Trump too.
Sure. I think Trump too took the possibility off of the table as much as it could be, because this is the alternative. This is the issue. People act like, oh, it was Trump.
But you think JD Vance is farther away from
No.
the presidency as a current vice president right now than if he would have lost that election and been the failed vice presidential
What
candidate?
I'm saying is we wouldn't even need to talk about JD Vance because Trump would be able to run it.
Could you answer my question though? Do you think he's closer or further away from the presidency?
I mean, he's closer, but Trump is far farther. And I would rather
Trump's
Trump
farther
be
away because he
literally
can't serve a third
disqualified.
term. That doesn't.
That's what I'm saying.
It.
That's
So you're saying
the
Trump being
alternative of
president
Trump
is
too
good
was
because he
can
can't
run
be
again.
president again.
I literally said that when he was getting elected. Yes, like I was like, at least if he gets elected, I don't have to worry about him hanging over the party anymore. He can't run again, and he loses all of his power.
So Trump is a bad case of chicken pox.
Yes, Trump is. That's kind of been my argument this whole time. Is like we're ODing on Trump right now so that we can excise that energy from the party.
Number
one, the whole idea.
Some people when they OD, they don't come back up. Number two, so there's always a problem that Trump. Okay.
Again,
tell me how Trump's going to react.
No.
Jeb, tell me honestly. You know how Donald Trump would react if his hand-picked candidate lost the general election in 2028 and he thought his legacy in some way was threatened, that he would react constitutionally and with prudence, and that he would peacefully transfer power over. Do you think that Trump, 3 years from now, whatever condition his mind's going to be in, is going to confidently make that assertion as a patriotic American?
I mean, confidently make the answer. Like, are you just saying, like, will he be the perfect? Hillary
No,
Clinton
not be the what do you mean the perfect
like
president?
Well, because
peacefully transferring over power isn't like perfect president material. It's kind of like the bare minimums of like, you know, hold your utensils, like
that's
why
I'm
your
clarifying. Hold on, you're acting like I am painting your opinion. I'm clarifying your opinion. I'm saying, are you asking me if he's going to do it with the greatest of like chutzpah and he's going to be this guy who's so excited?
I'm asking you if there's any chance
asking me if he's going to do the bare minimum and
is going to try to finagle it. That he's going to say, actually, we found some crazy evidence that Barack Obama and the deep state, once again, with the bamboo paper, and then he's going to try to do what he did last time, learning from his mistakes, and try something with a lot more loyalists in position. Because JD Vance, he said on the campaign trail, he would be willing to do what Mike Pence didn't when he tried to overthrow the election.
They took away that role from the vice president.
Whether or not they took away that role from the vice president, my point is, I'm asking you whether or not Donald Trump would try, because I can't tell you that.
He might try, but we can look down like 10 different
pathways of things Donald Trump could try, but would likely not succeed. Maybe he would try 3, 4, 5, 6 of those pathways. My point is that there should be nobody in a position who would even try to test and break the system, because you know the system's great. We worship the system. Fantastic. I mean, most people don't worship the system, but the system's great. It's a good thing to maintain for continuity of government, so we're not all shooting each other. And like every time it succeeds in holding it back, we're like, oh, well, of course, it's the system. We always doubt the system. But we never really necessarily know how close it is to actually breaking. And so I'm saying, let's not fuck with it. Let's not fuck with it. Because Trump has already really tested it
before. Because I think that I made this argument after January 6th, is that January 6th made it even harder to do January 6th again. I was saying that because all the Democrats were saying, look, January 6th happened once. That means he's way more likely for something like that to happen again. I'm like, actually, no. Sure, you might say that it's more likely that he might try, but it's far less likely that he can because it's
a beer hall push now stops a beer hall push later, right?
Well, it's just a matter of there were material ways. This isn't a guess. Like, you just brought it up. You just were like, J.D. Vance said he would do the thing. And I'm like, he can't do that. Like, we took away routes.
I'm not saying that the institutions haven't strengthened themselves, but when you have somebody who is the head like political official in the United States who does not care, and he has surmounted people around him, unlike first term, who also do not care and will do what he says in order to stay in positions of power. And you also have legislators around the country who are willing to be more bold and trying to garner him more political power. For example, that these electoral redistricting maps that are happening in Texas, that are happening now in other Republican states, as we do this kind of arms race with gerrymandering, like this was something that was denied years ago, where before a lot of Republicans actually looked at these maps and they said, nah, we shouldn't do this. Because number one, the math might actually end up fucking us because we might actually make more of these areas competitive. And number two, we don't want to cause some arms race. And number three, it probably made some of them sick in the stomach because they knew what they were doing. It was politicians picking their voters over voters picking their politicians. And now that Trump went in there and he made a few phone calls, they're willing to do this arms race in order to protect the midterms. They will continue to look for new ways and more ways to, even if they can't keep Trump in power forever, to try to finagle it so they can keep his legacy in power, or somebody else can come in and try to use the same tools to keep their legacy in power. It's not even just about Trump. It's about somebody coming in and picking up his playbook, and if he doesn't leave the White House a disgruntled fucking mess with everything that he's ever touched looking like complete clownery that will be covered in history books, I worry people will normalize the type of unconstitutional things he's done and use it to break the system for good.
Yeah, I understand that worry. What I'm saying is what I am seeing in reality is a fatigue on the playbook, not just on the dude. It's a fatigue on the playbook. They're not just sick of him. They're sick of the things that flow out from him as well. Like, you're going to have dyed-in-the-wool MAGA people that will defend everything. Sure. Those people are so few and far between now. There is so much more willingness to dissent from Trump publicly, even in like the paid to be pro-Trump conservative spaces now. Like every single one of them has fractured into pieces over Trump. Like you even have InfoWars losing people because they were asked to be too pro-Trump and they left. Like I get it. I understand that from the Democrat point of view, the world is an evil, run by, like, poisoned by Trump place right now, and it's just getting worse. And Trump being in power, there's no way that Trump being in power can actually be bad for him. But I'm telling you, the reality from what I'm seeing among conservatives fucking everywhere across the country and even internationally is people are sick of the playbook. They don't like Vivek. They are hating Vance because he's attached to Trump. They are hating Trump because he's attached to all these things he's doing. It's not just him. Like, they are aware of why they hate him. They're aware of the things he does that they're not liking. And they are aware that they want something different and that different is refreshing. And I think that is why you're going to see someone very different get nominated for the GOP next time. And at the end of the day, again, the institutions have steeled themselves from any attempt of any bullshittery he's going to do near the end. And again, I don't think he's going to have nearly as many people itching to do his bidding when his end is on the horizon as much as they were during the Biden presidency, where they're like, we still kind of have to be beholden to Trump because if he decides to run again, he is going to win. And then I'm going to be fucked if I'm caught on the outside of that. It's going to be the complete opposite dynamic. Where
it depends.
These people are ready to eat Trump, and if I look like a Trump dick sucker next year and he doesn't get his one guy in,
because in order to win a Republican primary, Trump's endorsement, for a lot of these people, they will fight for it. Now, whether or not Trump's endorsement will matter in any individual primary, I don't know. But a general election or a primary election to see who the general election candidate, I think the previous president's endorsement actually quite matters a lot. If Barack Obama went out there and endorsed somebody at the start of the 2016 primary, I think that's something that's probably could have shaken up the vote quite significantly. So
maybe, but we're in an we're in a very different political climate than we ever have been historically. We're in an anti-establishment political climate. It's the same reason. It's the same reason why I said incumbency is no longer an advantage. It's the incumbent disadvantage.
I'm not
now.
saying that him being the incumbent. Of course, when you're the incumbent, you have to answer to the actual problems, and that's why immediately Trump started bailing out instead of saying, "Well, Ukraine war is Biden's war." He started trying to make all of the or the best example of this was when the economy is up, it's Trump. When the economy is down, it's Biden. Like there was all these ways where he's trying to shape the narrative that I can agree with you that like Trumpism or like the MAGA movement is not immortal. It is not invincible. A lot of Trump's just personal character failings and a lot of inconsistencies in his beliefs on, like, number one, losing world reserve currency status would be like losing a war, but also we need to devalue the dollar so we get more competitive in international trade. Like a lot of these things, ideas directly contradict each other. And so these types of direct contradictions are going to be problems. But
and he's gotten even lazier. And
that still doesn't mean that somebody For example, let me put it this way. Outside of the idea of like a continued MAGA candidate, let's put that aside for a moment, because I don't think they're for sure dead, but I do think they're going to have a lot to answer for in 3 years, and they're going to have some sort of reckoning to deal with. But what if somebody came in that's not that has the traits of MAGA that allowed Trump to, get his name into every household, but also was a lot smarter and knew how to present himself in a different way? What I am not talking about is necessarily a MAGA threat. It isn't even necessarily a Republican Party threat. It could be a Democrat. It could be anybody. Somebody who sees the ways that Trump abuses and stretches the powers of the office, and then somebody steps in his place after seeing it normalize and says, well, the Republicans did it. Why can't I, Gavin Newsom, do this? Well, since Donald Trump did it, of course I'm going to do it in response. What do you mean? Yeah. And then as you normalize this type of behavior, things that are an antithesis to our democracy, like gerrymandering, which I know gerrymandering right now isn't perfect, but we're actually at one of the best periods to be an American voter when it comes to how bad gerrymandering has been historically. We are right now headed in the exact opposite direction, which is something that's going to be a downward pressure on our ability to really hear what the people want or to properly represent the people. And it's these types of things that I think worry me about Trump, is that by Trump going out there, he has the way of making the ridiculous normalize very quickly, just through him doing it over and over and over again, saying the same ridiculous bullshit. If Barack Obama got in office and said, let's fucking take over Greenland and let's do this and do that, he would have been laughed out of the room. But he has a way of normalizing things. Right now, there's like over 30% of Americans who think we should like take over Greenland. That's fucking insane. We have like 33% of America who thinks like, this is like Victoria too. You just hit the colonize button, and like then the native peoples disappear. I won't make. We can
buy it with cloth and PS5s. Okay, we just trade them the PS5s, and they'll give us Greenland.
My point is that Trump as a normalizing force for a lot of dangerous actions, as well as somebody who stretches the bounds of the system, despite the fact that he's going to govern this country in very asinine ways that's going to cost a lot of lives, not only through U.S. aid cuts, international diplomatic decisions, but also domestic decisions on how you manage rural emergency radio response and that being defunded, or when it comes to how these airplanes and these different management systems, the traffic control, how they're being managed. But institutionally, I'm scared about the next person who picks up the keys and how they look at expanded powers that they could have in their disposal, especially if they now think, I can deploy troops in any town in the country as long as I just finagle it just right.
Yeah, but again, now the courts are coming after him, and we're probably going to have stealed that as well. We're literally like, you made the chickenpox joke, but I actually thought it was kind of an apt comparison, because we are literally getting step-by-step inoculated to a lot of these overreaches of power, and they're getting harder and harder to do because
he's doing problem, them so lazily. That doesn't go just one way. The reason the chickenpox thing is wrong is like, we make a move, they make a move. It's not like Trump's lawyers are fools. Right? Trump himself might not be the smartest man on the planet on every respect. He has a great media mind. He knows how to do like social manipulation very well. There's like things about him that are very intelligent. I'm sure he knows beautiful homes maybe, but his lawyers are not stupid people. And when the administration, when the courts decide something, they appeal it. They continue their arguments. They continue to drag it out. And it's not like the Trump administration, and this is the real dangerous thing, has not ignored the courts in the past. There have been times where the courts have made decisions and they blatantly, while pretending not to know the decisions of the court, ignored them. With the most clear case being the area where you say Trump is doing the most good, or at least the most success, which is his deportations, the illegal deportations of many people who had not been approved to be deported or had no deportation orders. And this was done so rapidly after these court decisions to try to get this deniability, which has already been torn apart in public, this deniability. But in order to push this forward, they deported people so fast. They deported women to men's prisons. They deported like these like gay hairdressers as like dangerous criminals to foreign country. And like they come back and they report abuse. They report all these horrible things at the same time that Trump's talking about deporting American citizens. It's that type of testing the system that you really stand back and you want to make sure the system's, I get it. You're checking the safety lock a little bit. And so there's something valuable about that. But I also don't think that in order to test your fire extinguisher, you should let your couch on fire.
Of course, but here's my issue was this was my option. I can
Also, Glitter
set the
Bell, thanks for the
couch-
raid.
I can set the couch on fire and extinguish it. And then fuck, my couch got burned, but I was able to extinguish it and I can move on and start dealing with what comes after the couch fire. Or I can hang an oil lamp 2 feet above my couch. And I can just leave it hanging there. Those were the options presented to me. Those were the options that I knew existed. Because this, I don't know, Democrats never say this, but it's kind of hinted at like, well, he just should never have been in office again. Like him losing this last election would delete him from politics. It wouldn't. Like, that's the problem, is MAGA is loud enough to where if there is a chance, if there is a legal window for Trump to come back, they will hold out hope. Like, listen, he's the guy who can win. And even when it was clear that he wasn't the guy who could win, he was fresh off a loss. It didn't matter then. It probably wouldn't matter after that. I would rather just hit my couch with the match and extinguish it real quick, then hang the oil lamp over my couch in perpetuity
after January
forever
6th that Trump could make a comeback?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Was that like something you were confident in, or was that something you kind of just
No.
like had a feeling like Trump could make a comeback after this on like January 10th, 20th?
It's very much like my midterm prediction for the Democrats this year, which was Trump probably can't make a comeback unless something really crazy happens on the Democrat side. And then you saw the Democrats, in my opinion, handle an election about as poorly as you can handle an election in terms of the ramp up to, and then have pretty profound bad luck.
That's the thing, though. Like, I mean, the bad luck combined. I mean, some of it, of course, was bad luck, but a lot of it also was bad decision making. But how can we also just like you can assume that 2028 or 2032, because it's not like, you know, after one election, like a ideology or a lack of respect for institutions like just like goes away or whatever. It's not like all these political figures just die one election, you know, away.
Yeah.
If the Democrats just do ass in 2028, I mean, that's not a particularly like extremely unlikely outcome, is it? It's not very unlikely that the Democrats put forward a candidate that's not a banger.
In 2028, I have no idea, because I don't know where the Democrat Party is right now. I know where Democrats.
How can you say
1%?
That's what I don't get. You say there's 1% risk, and you're saying,
oh,
okay, so how do you know who's going to beat this if it's only 1% risk? Well, I have no clue who the Democrats are going to put forward.
I tried to clarify this before. The less than 1% is Trump being able to come back, like Trump himself. Like a Trump, I'm not that worried about like a Trump inspired candidate coming in, because I just don't think they're going to be as bad as Trump, even if they're trying to be a diluted version. I just don't think that person would win. Like, but yeah, that's probably like a higher chance, like maybe a 10% chance. I see it as really unlikely coming from the Democrats. I think if the Democrats run Gavin Newsom, they lose, and that's the only even kind of Trump-ish candidate for the Democrats. Like, I don't like the Democrats' policy, but they're not bad people. If you guys run Josh Shapiro, I think you guys would have a great chance, and he's not Trumpy at all, and it could be a great time. If you guys run Bashir, I think, you know, he's not going to turn into Trump. On the GOP side, I see nobody who has potential to turn out like Trump, really, unless you're going to say that Vance just has really been convinced that Trump is the best and isn't just suckling his teat so that he can hold that vice president spot. You could argue maybe Vance, but I even wouldn't argue Vance is that likely to become a Trump-like candidate. The only Trump-like candidate
question
I've
is
seen
not
in
having
the primary
the next
is Vivek,
necessarily
and he
Trump. You're not going to
terrible.
have Trump 2.0. But the book keeps on turning, right? The people keep on moving, and people are going to use like the foundation Trump laid. And so it's the foundation that Trump leaves
just don't
behind.
think so.
It's the trail that he leaves. It's the decisions that he gets. It's the powers that he can get his hands on. It's the things that he normalizes. It isn't just about whether the next candidate is just Donald Trump Jr. doing an impression of his father.
Sure, but in that case, like, I don't even really know. I can't even really paint a picture of what it is you're asking me to predict at that point to put a percentage on it when it's so ethereal that what is the chances that someone who might
like
use part of the foundation
it's not
Trump
that ethereal
left.
to say that Donald Trump normalizes anti-democratic behavior, and he does anti-democratic behavior or behavior that damages our institutions very openly, blatantly.
Sure.
Whether it
But
has
what
to do
I'm
with
saying is when you're
gerrymandering, whether it
asking me
has
to
to do with
predict-
unconstitutional taxes being imposed through the executive, whether it has to do with the way he
Sure, but now
biasly
we're
treats
from
red
Trump-
states versus
now
blue
we're from-
states.
predict Trump 3 all the way to predict that someone might do something anti-democratic that may have had its window opened by Trump at some point in one of his administrations, those are very far apart from one another to me. But I get that they're both concerning,
but I mean, this is,
but that's not what I was
are you
asked to
saying that
predict when I said the
normalization? I mean,
1%
okay,
thing.
well then, if I was to say, if you were to say the assault weapons ban, and I could just say something like, well, the assault weapons ban before fell through, the assault weapons ban again could fall through, and maybe it wouldn't be renewed, and then it would
But like we literally had one for a long time.
Yeah, I know. Why don't we have it anymore?
Just lapsed. Because it lapsed. Like there was a time period on it, and it expired.
So then the same thing could happen. Constitution saved.
Sure, but it's a lot more like 30 to 40% chance that that happens, and it's, you know.
Where are you getting these fucking numbers from?
An entire party wants to do. An entire party supports doing it.
Okay, and how many votes would you need to get that through the House and Senate?
60. So you need 10 from the other side. So again, 40%.
Do you think you're going to get 10 Republican votes? Did you think Harris was going to get those votes?
I don't know.
Do you think Kamala Harris could get 10 votes from the Republican Party, not only 10 votes from the Republican Party in the Senate, but also get a majority of the House, which was going to be the body that was going to be the closest, no matter how the election went, assuming that it was still in Democratic control? We had to control it by 1 or 2 seats. So you would need to get a significant amount of Republicans to sign on to an assault weapons ban in the House and Senate, which I just don't see.
If the Democrats did what they do, which is they time their give a fucks about assault weapons bans and things like that for when there's a headline of dead children to capitalize on, they either get an assault weapons ban or they do the other Democrat sort of attack vector, and they just have their governors, their executives, try to implement it on the state level. And they give them all the support they could possibly have to do it on the state level, and they fund initiatives to do it on the state level.
I'll say that just throwing out gun control, or just the general topic of gun control after every single shooting, even in instances where gun control wouldn't have clearly been the answer, is pretty ridiculous. I don't know if it's as ridiculous as every reaction to a shooting being lynch trans people, even when the person isn't trans. Of course. You know, there's a lot of like crazy shit that gets thrown out there. But what you're describing has happened multiple times before. I mean, during the Obama administration, it was probably those press conferences were the most tear jerky, right? Though that pressure campaigns were the most pressury, and it didn't do shit. It didn't budge anybody. Everybody was fine. And you're thinking post-Trump, after years and years and years of this is going to be the moment when we get 10 Republicans to flip and all these other people to flip. I mean, whether or not Joe Biden said he wants to do the assault weapons ban, it's not a question of just saying you want to do something. Joe Biden and Harris, unlike Trump, are institutionalists. They are people who would be very scared about shaking their cage in a way that Donald Trump is. And so if they can't get those majority votes in the House and Senate, they can't do an assault weapons ban through budget reconciliation.
No, they can't. But they can push it through on the state level and just try to get as many states as possible to do a similar thing. And again, I'm in California. So it's like we already have our gun laws so cucked. I see what that reality looks like, and they can implement that everywhere.
Wait, but the states could do that with or without Harris regardless. Her position on the federal law, I mean, all she could do is like go around and like, I guess, make it like a rap for the youth about say no to guns or something. What would she do? Is she like a pressure campaign? Potentially
court appointments on both the local and state or local and federal level. That's really how that's how we got shall issue concealed carry throughout the entire country, was solely through Donald Trump's court appointments. Like most of the gun law issues get decided in the courts because the states, you're right, the states are power grabby with guns. It's disgusting. The most attacked amendment of the Bill of Rights is the second. Bar none, there is no comparison, and it's consistently the Democrats. They're always doing it. And seeing more Democrats in power that want to actively, and again, notably, this is a reality in which they win on it. Sorry, my camera's frozen. This is a reality in which they win on these issues, meaning people probably generally support them in whatever they want to do regarding gun control. Yeah, that's far more likely than Trump being able to run for a third term.
I mean, if those are the two things you're facing off each other, well, okay, there's no pathway. There's no pathway for an assault weapons ban. This was a promise that was being put forward by the Biden administration that probably did not have a deliverable. Or if they were able to deliver on it, the amount of compromises they would have to make would be the type of compromises that would kind of defeat much of the purpose of the bill in the first place. maybe they'd be able to get something through. But in order to get those votes, when we're talking about the real aftermath of the 2024 election, when you're going to have the maybe Democrat plus 1-2 in the House, Democrats 50 in the Senate, you are going to have to make very substantial compromises. And it's going to be stuff like, if you've beat a woman 3 times, you can't get an AK-47. That's the type of stuff they would ultimately have to put in there instead of the more expansive stuff, which, look, I'm pretty pro-gun, definitely considering for a Democrat. But when these are the different stakes, a vote that would probably not succeed, or a very, very, very watered down gun control bill in the post-Trump Republican Party that was never particularly happy when Trump talked about bump stocks and shit like that in the first term, versus Donald Trump,
again,
who's actively defying the courts right
appointments.
now when we talk about like the danger it does to our institutions or to our Constitution. I mean, like, Trump does unconstitutional shit every day of the week. That's like it's kind of like what he uses as an appetizer when he gets up in the morning.
But the issue is, what Trump is doing seemingly every time steals the system against what he is trying to do in the future. The way that the Democrats' dangers, because they're effective institutionalists, when they succeed, when they gain ground, it's pervasive. They're really good at redefining what is normal. I mean, we say that Trump normalizes shit, but everybody will immediately tell you, if you ask everybody, is Donald Trump normal or does he behave in a normal way? Literally ever, they'll say no. The Democrats dictated what was normal up until 2016.
That's different. Whether or not saying he behaves normal is different than saying he normalizes stuff. People who don't behave normal can still normalize stuff.
They can. So when you say normalize, I think you're using a different definition than the way the Democrats normalize things. Democrats get people to believe something is normal. Trump gets people to believe that something isn't alarming when he does it. Like, they're not surprised when he does it. Democrats get people to not be surprised about something, period. Democrats convinced us that Trump's air traffic control system was getting everybody murdered.
Line to ride our democracy on, Jeb. The idea that the buffs that Donald Trump has gotten when it comes to the outrageous things he does will only and always ever only apply to him, and that the consequences of his type of politics cannot be picked up by another statesman of some knowledge or some craft or who knows what they're doing. That is a very dangerous line to ride the democracy on, and still doesn't account for the 3 years of damage he can do.
When it's not normalized on a societal basis, and in fact, when your very presence gets people sort of not radicalized, but convinced against it, which is what is happening again. He's losing support. People are getting more against MAGA now than they are getting for MAGA, versus a group that can actually effectively normalize things. I agree that that is a thin line to ride, but in the opposite direction. I would much rather stay in safety land of, this guy's done in 3 years and he's going to sour people against anybody like him, at least for a long time, versus the Democrats who have a pretty effective infrastructure for literally just making things pervasive fact in the world of politics and media when they're completely untrue. Like, I still have people telling me that Trump is getting people killed with his air traffic control policies and layoffs and anti-DEI shit. It just didn't happen. There are no more incidents now with air traffic control issues than there were in years prior. It just isn't the case during either of his administrations. I still have people tell me that Biden created like 11 million jobs. It just didn't happen.
Wait, okay,
the government said you can't work,
and
then said you can work.
I don't know if the media. Okay, this is the problem, because the media will say one thing, and sometimes it's the media making a mistake. Another time is the media says something and people interpret it another way, and then they run with it because it's the easier way to say it. For example, Trump isn't good for air traffic control. And I know I live in the DC area. Ronald Reagan International Airport, that was my backyard. Those were a bunch of my like people from my area that ended up getting exploded. And his response to that was to go out and blame DEI and woke and all this nonsense, instead of waiting for any of the information to come out, because he wanted to use the corpses of people from the Maryland and Virginia area and DC area as a weapon against DEI policies. And if that's the way he's going to be reacting and talking about these incidents, then we're not going to be able to have an honest dialogue about what the problem was, how to respond to it, how to deal with it next time. And with the dialogue he's putting about higher standards for air traffic control. What the fuck is he talking about? The problem with air traffic control isn't standards of the people who are working there. The problem with air traffic control is we just don't have enough air traffic controllers.
Staffing.
It takes a long time to train through it. I mean, it's like years of you just working and training and getting paid to be an air traffic controller. And the conversation should be, hey, maybe we should increase the stipends for the training period so people can live easier while they're training before they get on the job. Because I mean, you have to train full time. It's not like a part-time, you go on the weekends thing. And instead, he's saying, oh, we just let too many other black people on the plane. I mean, like, I don't want to be blunt, but I'm being blunt here. And so, I mean, there's some truth to the idea that we can't have an honest conversation about this anymore.
But the thing is, MAGA believes that. They believe it's the DEI bullshit. Most conservatives don't. All Democrats don't. When we see mass shootings pop off, the Democrats will immediately, before reading anything into it, they'll say it was a fucking AR-15 and we need to ban assault weapons, and an assault weapons ban would fix it. And they are effective. Like 60 to 70% of people in the aftermath of these shootings think the Democrats are telling the truth about an assault weapons ban being a potential solution for this stuff, and that we need action, and that's the action that we need. And they have literally made it impossible to ever have an honest conversation about gun control. Trump, sure, you can't have an honest conversation with Trump or with MAGA about gun control. Democrats have made, or about air traffic control. Democrats make conversations impossible to have, period, because they create like this underlying fact that everybody just agrees to that is just not true.
Dude, I mean, like,
so it's
I have to listen
you
to
can say
Scott
it's equally
Jennings
dangerous,
slap
but one's
his
way
jaws
more
on CNN every other day and listen to him screech and yell and go off and on and just ramble and ramble. And I don't like what he has to say. That's probably not surprising to you, but that's what's going on in the mainstream Clinton news network, right? I mean, these conversations can happen. Conversation about gun control can happen. But when the president of the United States, like, I'll throw out there, somebody could shut down a conversation, but Donald Trump is poison for these conversations. He just goes out there, lies about whatever the conversation is, whatever it is, and then moves on to the next. Whether it had to do with Ukraine, whether it had to do with the plane crashes, whether it has to do with flooding in rural news agencies, and whether they're going to get the rural radio station funding nor necessary to give emergency broadcasting. I mean, I'll agree that there are Democrats that talk about guns in a really stupid manner. They don't know how guns work, and they're just very gun grabby. I'll agree to that, but Democrats I don't know how this is so vile that it overruns Trump's inability to ever tell the truth.
Because it's not that it overruns it. Again, what I'm saying is one ends in a few years. One has literally plagued these conversations for as long as I have been alive on this planet.
Wouldn't it be more important then
to the pervasiveness matters more to me?
If this is true, wouldn't it be more important to put a quicker end to Trumpism so the Republicans could have a normal candidate to deal with the Democrats?
That's what
so wouldn't
I'm
that
saying.
mean
But I can't make
stop,
people not Trumpists. I can make it so he can't
You don't
run.
even okay, well, I'm trying to finish my point before you think I'm agreeing with you. Because if you're excited for me to disagree with you, then this is great news. But then it would make more sense for him to have lost in 2024. It would have made more sense for Trump to lose, him to be a two-time loser, where he had no ability to grab the election system and try to manipulate it after, pull another January 6th, or try to do something like that, and then show him to be a two-time loser, and the Republicans have no choice but to look elsewhere. They can't run Trump a third time.
You don't know that, though. That's the issue. Here's the problem. Here's the
problem. Either way, Trump's going to be old as shit. He's already going to be the oldest president in American history now. If he was to run again in 2028, he'd have to be the oldest president by far. So there's also a question
again.
And we don't. And
you're talking about two things that didn't matter in 2024, and saying that it.
You see him slipping just like you see everybody else slipping too. So we don't know what even state he's going to be in 3 years.
I agree that we don't know. That's
so we
my
should
problem,
just deal with another 4 years of Trump now
win.
to hope that there's not another 4 years of Trump later.
I would rather deal with the 4 years of Trump and MAGA now than deal with 8 years of MAGA infestation of politics and 4 years of Trump later. because they're staying MAGA because they think that Trump will have the power over them in the future. MAGA is a power-driven movement. It is I can go up if I follow this guy up. He is the ladder to go up. If the ladder doesn't exist anymore, that's the only way MAGA dies, and it's a really effective way. It's not even like it might finally die now. It is going to die once that ladder doesn't exist
why
anymore.
is it so that another loss for Trump wouldn't have been, that would have shown like MAGA politics would have been like, you know, guaranteed for decades more, but Trump winning actually kills MAGA politics, and it means that nobody else can kind of pull up the ladder. Because I could see, because I would see
left
what
in it. Trump won't have the power anymore. He won't be able to ruin the lives of the people who disobey him anymore. Because not only does will he not be able to be president again, but again, the MAGA fatigue is a real thing that is accelerating at rates I thought that it would be slower.
So you twist it around.
I said that
you rebrand it. You make it different. You try to make it more friendly. You try to. There's the point. My point to you isn't that there isn't MAGA fatigue, or people aren't like upset with how the administration's going. People aren't getting a bad taste in their mouth. My point to you is Trump's got another 3 years to push and tug and pull on the system. Democrats have 3 years to fuck it up. And in that time period, I think a lot of damage can be done. And after that, you don't even know for sure if people are really going to be completely within the Republican Party sick of MAGA. The country might be sick of MAGA, but maybe the party isn't necessarily sick of MAGA.
The party doesn't need to be completely sick of it. They just need to be more sick of it than they aren't. And I think they're already there.
I don't,
because we're just talking about who will win in a primary.
That doesn't seem to be bearing out in polling. How do you know that?
From, again, everybody I've spoken to, both in the DC area who works in the conservative politics, who talks to like the people who work under him, and conservatives at large. Most of the conservatives I'm talking about, they'll be supportive on an individual issue, right? But then they'll be like, yeah, we need someone better. We need someone that like can actually bridge a gap with the other side, because we just can't get anything done. Because their idea of all of Trump's failures is that the Democrats will just never work with him and that he's poisoned. And until this Epstein stuff came out, and now I think it's just completely fallen apart for him. But up until before, they were already recognizing, they're like, there is no continuation with MAGA because the Democrats can never work with MAGA. We'll never be able to get anything passed as a MAGA party because we can't even get most of the Republicans to agree with it. The Democrats certainly will obstruct everything that they can while it's still a thing. Whereas they're like, if we can at least unify the party under something a little bit more milquetoast, we'll have a lot more effective policymaking in the future. This is the people who are actually strategizing sort of in DC. And then for regular conservatives, I'm fucking tired of seeing him in the news every day. I'm tired of it. I don't want to see, they're like the next president, I don't want to fucking see him. I had to see Joe Biden in the news all the time because the Democrats thought that was the playbook because of Trump. Then I have to see Trump on the news every day again. I'm fucking sick of it.
Well, wasn't the complaint that Joe Biden wasn't on the news, that he was just like huddled up in a basement? Like,
it's not, yeah, he himself wasn't speaking to the press, but every day was another fucking story about Joe Biden and all the great things he was doing. And now he was in all these talks with all these senators passing all these bills when it was like just not true. But they had to hear about it because the Democrat knew the playbook was to constantly be talking about
a lot more bills than Trump did.
Biden
passed a lot more bills by this point in his presidency than Trump did.
Sure. I'm saying Biden was not. And by all accounts now, with all these books coming out from the Democrat Party, Biden was not really that active a negotiator in almost any of them. So it's like, it just wasn't, he wasn't out here wheeling and dealing the way that, you know, the Democrats want to say he is. And again, this isn't me just trying to be like a partisan shill. I do think Democrats have people who can wheel and deal, and they have really well-meaning politicians that, you know, I wouldn't think are world ending to win an election. What I'm saying is, the MAGA fatigue has reached a point where I think if we had a primary right now that Trump was not involved in, I'm pretty certain the MAGA candidate would lose. We already saw how a MAGA candidate did in a primary that Trump was in, which obviously taints the pool a little bit, but it's like he wasn't a top 5. Like, it wasn't like he got close and barely got edged out because a lot of the Trump voters were just filling in Trump. It was Vivek didn't exist in polling in primaries. I don't think he broke 4 or 5% polling average compared to like DeSantis, who everybody said was like a generational floundering of a primary, sat at like 11 to 14% the entire time. And that was a generational failure of a primary campaign. Vivek couldn't even get a third of it. So it's like, that I don't see this yearning for a Trump in different clothes. I just don't, and anywhere.
I don't know if it, again, my point has never been it has to be specifically a Trump and other clothes. It just has to, if somebody's like Mike Pence in demeanor, but has the same maliciousness towards our institutions, towards the Constitution, towards any barriers holding him back, towards the system of checks and balances as they stand, then it doesn't really matter all that much to me. Like, it's still the same thing. It's just the only difference is going to be a lot less comical and maybe a little more ghoulish.
Sure. What I think is there is a genuine appetite, and this is what I've been seeing in like the conservative media, even in like the alternative media that is apolitical, that leaned heavily conservative during the last election. They're having dudes like Thomas Massie on. They have they're starting to have Democrat politicians on that are like constitutionalists, right? There's a strong appetite for people who openly value the Constitution, who openly value getting things done the right way, and who openly value being a representative through the executive, as opposed to being an executive working to sort of fight against the representative legislature. Like, they are thirsty for someone who wants to act as a representative.
I don't know who the fuck you're talking to, right? Because honestly, I think the Trump base is not anywhere near that right now. I think that most of I wouldn't even say most of the Republican Party is anywhere near that right now. I think
I disagree.
I think the people who work in DC are near that. I don't think I talk to the same people you talk to, but I can hear the tone in your voice that I've heard off the voices from those people who are actually in the know because they have to see the mess that they make every week, right? But when it comes to the rank and file Republicans, the polling data still reflects that the majority of them still support Trump. And I don't even know if they had another election today, if Trump would lose. I honestly don't. He's polling a lot worse today, but I still don't know that. And I think that
I think he would for now. I think I genuinely, my prediction for the midterms was that the Democrats were going to absolutely fucking clobber the Republicans in the midterms unless something crazy happened. Unfortunately, Gavin Newsom is making something kind of crazy happen. It's just a matter of how publicized it's going to be. But with what I'm hearing in the local politics, they're going to make it a big deal. Even Democrats in some Democrat organizations or historically Democrat organizations are going to make it a big deal and make it very loud that this is happening in California. So
what is happening?
It might not. He's trying to revoke our gerrymandering protection. He's trying to do a special election to remove the gerrymandering.
You think that's going to be the big thing that destroys Democrats in the midterms?
I don't think it'll destroy him. I don't think they're going to get clobbered, but I think now it could be a lot closer, and Republicans may be able to hold on to a majority.
I think it'll have zero impact.
So Gavin Newsom is not only doing this, which is going to lose some support. It's also gotten 3 or 4 states that never.
Is Gavin Newsom on the ballot?
No. Okay. Democrats are on the ballot, and they're running on like sort of a moral high ground and a normalcy high ground on the conservatives. But then now they've given conservative media something to play on. And in response to Gavin now doing this and sort of him striking this big blow back, you now have 3, I think, red states that hadn't talked about gerrymandering at all before, even when they were called by Trump. Now, after Gavin doing it, now being like, okay, well, maybe.
Yeah, and my state of Maryland's talking about getting rid of our only Republican representative, Andy Harris. We're talking about making him run in Baltimore County.
Yeah. And so it's like there's a number of red states that are willing to return. I think the numbers aren't going to work out in the Democrats' favor if this does become the arms race that it's supposed to be. Listen, and this isn't me justifying that Texas did it. I'm not saying it was right that Texas did it and then wrong that Gavin did it. It was disgusting when Texas did it. But what Gavin is doing, again, is worse because you're removing the protections from the Constitution of California to do it. Which means, again, pervasive and lasting.
Oh, my God. That's limp-wristed of you.
No. The impact is worse. It is
the impact
just
isn't worse. I mean, like, the impact is worse than
the idea that... It removes it from the Constitution. It literally is worse. It is more bad thing happening. Like, there's just... there is no way around that.
You can change the... If he changes the Constitution through a voted majority and he isn't, like, finagling it and doing it illegally, then he's changing the Constitution. I want every state to have an independent board that chooses its districts. That's what I want. Yep. That's what I think would be the most democratic way to do it. And so then you would expect there to be a few blue seats and a few red seats in the reddest parts of the country, but you couldn't like abuse them out of it and squeeze it for every little piece. And you would be able to make politicians have to attend to their voters instead of the other way around. If that's not going to happen, and Texas is going to destroy their electoral college map, and that's what they're doing. They're destroying it. There will not. There's no. They're trying to tear it up in a way so there's only 3 Democratic congresspeople in all of Texas.
Yeah.
Which, if you look at the general election results, Democrats lose in the single digits. They lose in the single digits in the general election results. Beto O'Rourke didn't almost beat Ted, but it was a lot closer than 3 congressional seats in all of Texas. And so
and you
to
could
say
argue
that the
that was a
response
bad
to
candidate,
that
too. It should have been
of
closer.
responding in kind, literally seat by seat, is worse than initiating it after being ordered by the president of the United States to rig an election in his favor.
Worse.
It's like I don't agree.
I'm not moralizing. I am outcome driven.
I'm moralizing. It is a moral question. It's an ethical question.
I'm saying one outcome is worse because, like you said, I also don't like gerrymandering. I also want progress toward no gerrymandering. So when one state is currently allowed to gerrymander and is gerrymandering, that is bad. When one state does not allow gerrymandering and they use a rush special election to get a majority of people with the hope that they can sort of deceive them into thinking, because a lot of them do think. I've talked to multiple Democrats in the Twitch sphere. These are like politics affluent people that thought that somehow this Texas map was going to affect this upcoming midterm election. And I was like, no, that's not how it is. But they're deceiving people to try to get an overwhelming majority in a special election to reverse the Constitution. That takes away. We lose ground on gerrymandering in that case. In one case, yes, you have someone gerrymander. You have a state gerrymandering that can gerrymander. In the other case, you have a state that does not allow gerrymandering, pulling back that progress that was made by the other party. So it is like the most kind of malicious circumstance you could think of, because it's literally gerrymandering protections implemented by a Republican governor for the exact purpose of protecting the conservatives in the state of California in the face of overwhelming Democrat majorities. Having a Democrat governor come in and remove those protections so that he can gerrymander, that is so many more steps backward than a state that can already gerrymandering. Both are very bad. One had probably worse aims, right? Although I don't know if that's necessarily the case because, right, any gerrymandering is going to have the aim to help the current Republican Party. So I don't know that because Trump called them, that makes the intent worse, because the intent was always to help. There's no other reason to gerrymander than to help the current leader of the party. So I don't really see how it makes it a ton worse, other than like Trump bad, but I get it. The part that makes it worse is that they're doing it kind of halfway through the period of time when they usually do it. But again, they're allowed to, and they're doing it. California currently has constitutional lasting protections against it that are going to be eroded. And just the same as you would argue erosion of institutions is bad when Trump does it, I would argue that robust erosions to the point of amending a constitution forever is worse than when you're just doing something you're allowed to do. Institutionalisting, as we say.
Okay, so firing the first shot and listening to the president's word and doing this and starting this is worse. There would be no California looking at the Constitution and having a vote. And if they vote to change the Constitution legally, they did that legally. That doesn't make it worse because they're changing the Constitution. I would say it's worse.
I think it does, yeah.
I think it's worse if you're not going to be clear.
The
report was that Greg Abbott was not going to do it. They decided it was a bad idea. Then Trump called him, and then shortly after, he was announcing that that's what we're going to do. So this is an instance where Greg Abbott knows what he's doing is wrong, and I can see from his different CNN and TV appearances, he cannot really justify his actions. He just
certainly you
he
can't
merely
justify
is
gerrymandering.
just pointing to the idea that we got to do what we got to do, essentially.
Yep.
And so
this is literally always the case with
he's the
gerrymandering.
starting domino. I don't know how you could ever say that somebody reacting in kind, whether or not it comes with a state level constitutional change, is worse than the person who kicked over the first domino. He didn't have to listen to President Trump.
I mean, just sorry, I can't participate in the whether or not the Constitution is forever changed. Like, no, that is why. That is the big deal. There's no whether or not there. Those are two very different calculations.
So you're saying that Jerry, okay. It's a legalese. This to me feels like a legalese problem, because I understand that Yes, changing the Constitution is a big thing.
So why do you
it'd be
care
one
if
thing
we
if they
have
were
these
ignoring the
boards?
Constitution. They're changing the Constitution. So therefore, California and Texas gets on the same level. They get on the same level when it comes to the fact of the gerrymandering. They get the,
Sure,
has
then
the
adding
same
redistricting
outcome.
boards
You're
isn't
talking
good.
about this. You're talking about
Sure.
Trump. You're talking about all these other people on an outcome-based spectrum. This is about outcome.
Sure.
They end up at the same
Then
place.
yeah, then you can't argue that you're like super pro or that it matters much to you that these independent redistricting boards are added because you're saying it's not morally bad when they're taken. As long as it's done legally, who cares? But the issue is they're meant to protect minorities in heavy majority states.
If you're fighting a war and your enemy is using cluster bombs and you decide not to, then you're going to be at a disadvantage. If you're trying to win elections, if you're trying to go out there and you want to win this seat, win that seat, and one side is gerrymandering, it can get into a point, well, no matter how the political spectrum changes, how more people are with you or not, they could even try to go out and vote for you. But if it's districted in a certain way, it's too bad. It's all garbage. It doesn't matter. And so this thing, at the end of the day, yes, the outcomes there matter. And I think Texas is the one that fired the first shot, and they bear ultimate responsibility for that. Not that I like any of this.
But that's the thing is, at a certain point, someone's got to put a foot down. Otherwise, we just devolve. Everybody gerrymanders and there's no vote. We just have no elections that aren't rigged. I don't agree with that end. And so I have to think that the buck has to stop somewhere. And so I'm going to hold every single individual actor responsible for what they did. Because I'm not saying that if Kentucky decides to redistrict, that it's okay because California is changing theirs. And that Kentucky's doing it as a clearly would be doing it as a response to California.
At what point do Democrats you think should respond? If let's say Texas did it, and then Trump called, and if you think this is beneath Trump, then I don't know where we're going to be.
No, Trump did call.
Trump calls Missouri. Trump calls this. Trump called this state, and then his 4 or 5 different Republican governors is going forward with gerrymandering. At what point, if not after Texas, do Democrats say, "Okay, we have to do something"? Do they just stand there and martyr themselves off the morality of the congressional maps?
How many Democrat states have independent redistricting commissions?
I know my state has an independent redistricting commission, and we're talking about doing the same thing California did.
Yeah, so it's about single digits, maybe spitballing, like the double digits of other states that don't have them can do the in-kind action that's actually in-kind. If there's a bunch of red states doing it, you have a massive bunch of blue states doing it. You don't erode currently existing constitutional protections when that's what you claim to care about in the first place. Again, especially ones that were started by the other party. It depends on who's in the position
to take the action. If there is a state that can respond with 5 congressional seats that doesn't have that on the books, then good on them. If there's a coalition of 3 to 4 states that can do something in a similar manner, good on them.
There are.
Gavin, let me finish. It's a question of whether the governor will make that decision. It's a question of whether or not those states will make that decision, because you also don't want to piss off the people in your state who's like, look, I understand this is a federal thing, but that's my representative. And so it becomes a bigger problem than just that. Gavin Newsom, not caring, does it anyway. So Gavin Newsom was the one who was willing to pull the trigger, and so he's the one who ultimately did it.
See, but this is an inconsistent argument, because at the beginning you're like, I don't think it's going to move the needle at all for Democrats, but now you're admitting like the reason a lot of the other Democrat states won't do it is because
I am saying it's not going to move the needle for Democrats when it comes to the midterms. I don't think this will be the consequential thing on whether or not Gavin Newsom got rid of this constitutional amendment in order to respond in kind to the Republicans in Texas. I do think that different state level governors can have a problem on the state level if they start changing the maps, and that can be bad for them individually. Whether that will show up on the map on a large spectrum when it comes to the ultimate congressional makeup, I'm much more doubtful about.
Yeah, cool. And the reason why their people would be mad is the same reason why most of the general public is going to be mad that California is doing it, and it's becoming this big back and forth race, if it does, because the Kentucky is not actively considering doing it. I don't think Missouri's actively considering doing it. There are just people now calling for them to, but that's, like you said, the first domino to fall. I think you will get a similar response of, hey, I thought the Democrats were I thought they said gerrymandering was election rigging, and now they're trying to pass the Stop Election Rigging Act that, when you read it, is election rigging. It's like stop Stop Wildfires Act.
The
How are we gonna stop
idea is you
wildfires? By
respond to
setting our
them
own
removing
homes
5
on fire
Democrat seats
ourselves.
by removing 5 Republican seats, and then you balance it out. Now, is that rigging it on the local level? Yes. Is it balancing it out on the federal level? Temporarily, whether or not that lasts or not is much more debatable. It's not the state of affairs that I want, but I also don't understand how you could reserve the majority of your outrage for those responding, not those starting the process or the person you said you would have voted for.
I didn't. I didn't reserve most of my outrage for them. I very specifically
You
said I'm holding
that
each
Gavin Newsom was
individual
worse.
responsible.
If they're worse, that's more of your outrage.
I said his outcome was work and that I'm not moralizing. So this isn't a moral outrage that I'm giving more of to Gavin. I'm saying his outcome is worse. His outcome is just worse. It is more bad.
Do you think if Donald Trump
the same bad
didn't
as
call
Texas,
Greg
but
Abbott
with more added to it?
Do you think if Donald Trump didn't call Greg Abbott, that this entire situation might have been avoided in the first place?
Potentially, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if Greg Abbott's using Trump's desire
and you are telling
for
me
his own reputation, or
you
what,
are telling me that what Gavin Newsom and everything that's coming from this is probably one of the, I don't know if you would think this, but I would imagine you would, one of the more acidic things that are being done to our democracy right now. If you're a Republican in California, obviously your voice is going to be censored to some degree. If you're a Republican in on the Eastern Shore in Maryland, then it could happen to you as well. Missouri Democrat, XYZ, across the country. It becomes a question of whether or not you can do the electoral math, not win the votes. And this is a spiral that leads to us having some of the worst historical. People talk about the beauty of American elections, but American elections used to be pretty fucked actually a lot of times.
Yes,
and 100%. We can go back to that. And so it's one thing to talk about Trump in 3 years. Any Republican could use gerrymandering to their advantage. Many Republicans have, many Republicans will, and many Democrats can too. And so this is a version of the normalization of something that Trump is doing that Harris never would have done, never would have stepped anywhere near of.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, sure. Harris probably wouldn't have done this bad thing. So I'd never said she would. I'm not saying that Harris would do all the same bad things as Trump. No, I'm not saying they do all the same thing. I'm
saying that this is probably one of the worst things a president can do, one of the issues we need to continue to make progress on if we want our democracy to be attentive to people. And he's taken us in the exact wrong direction. Harris would have either kept 100%. Us in the same place or brought us in the right direction, likely.
I don't think she would have brought us in the right direction. I don't think she would have moved anybody on independent redistricting commissions. It wasn't something that she platformed on. It wasn't something she even really mentioned in her campaign. It was not a priority for her.
But even if she stands in place, there are multiple state governments that have been considering independent redistricting commissions for a very long time. This environment that we're entering right now,
and it's a pretty bipartisan issue too, for the most part among those states. Like if you look at the split of who was governor in the states when these redistricting commissions were passed, even in the blue states, a lot of them were Republicans. I think it's literally like an advantage of 1 for the Democrats. It's literally like an odd number, and the Democrats have the larger half of the odd number. But Republican governors like passing independent redistricting commissions about as much as Democrat governors do. California's independent redistricting commissions were passed by a Republican governor. So it's like, I agree that it would have been better for someone to stand in place on this issue. I don't know that I agree so much that I would want them to just attack a different vector of attacking people's rights, which is their right to self-defense and their right to actually protect
wouldn't have succeeded, but
what?
It just wouldn't have. I just wouldn't have succeeded. It wouldn't have gotten the votes.
Maybe not on the federal level, but if they're able to appoint enough justices and get court reviews to take away the decision that gave I forget which decision it was, that gave shall issue concealed carry permits across 48 of the 50 states, that's a marked step back, and that's definitely possible with enough federal court appointments. And so at the end of the day, what I'm saying is we have the regular Republican Democrat conflict, which I will almost always side with Republicans on those like kind of bread and butter values. Plus you have the end of Trumpism in MAGA. You have the effective end to that gets guaranteed closer by. And like I said, with the couch analogy you were talking about, again, yes, I would rather light the couch on fire and extinguish it now than leave the oil lamp right hanging over my couch for however long Trump manages to stay alive.
Man, again, I don't think Trump could really run in 2028 for reasons outside of just even the political spectrum, just the fact that he's old as shit. He continues to get older. It's having an impact on him being in the political scene for this long. And when he's not in office, the dude doesn't stop campaigning. The dude keeps campaigning. So if the dude lost in 2024, it's not like he would take a 4-year break and then get back into politics well rested. He would probably
Definitely
stay out
more
there, keep
restful,
running his
but-
hustles, probably do another Donald Trump trading card deck, and continue campaigning. And then in
Listen,
4
I
years, in
have
2028, he
Ivanka
would have been
coin.
running, going on 85, 86. He's going on
Yeah.
90 years old. He's about the same age as Robert Mugabe when he was like slipping into dementia and getting ousted from power. Donald Trump would be not only our oldest president ever, he would probably be setting the record to be our oldest president for many years to come.
It just doesn't seem to stop people who really like the character, right? Like people who really like Bernie Sanders never talk about, well, he would be the oldest, but they don't care.
It
Like,
did.
just
It did
doesn't-
have an impact on Joe Biden. I come from
Well, because Joe Biden
no,
came
wait,
out
wait.
into the debates and sounded like he was literally stroking out on stage.
and you don't think Donald Trump talking the way he does, adding the let's just say the demotion of old age. I don't really want to talk about it that way. That you couldn't see
Yeah.
him saying something absolutely apoplectic on stage and debate with some politician. And the politician doesn't need to do anything. They just need to look at him like,
I mean, yeah, I've just never seen it happen as bad as it did with Biden. I have no reason to believe it would be because I don't see that happening to him now.
I mean, I see him making
obviously,
mistakes
he's-
about like names of people, like not remembering people he's known for years and years and years, talking about people who have died, misnaming foreign leaders, talking about the peace deal between Armenia
Sure.
and Albania. Like it's the types of mistake, and they're increasing in frequency.
But he did that in 2016.
But
Yeah,
this
he did
is
that shit
increasing in
2016.
frequency, and the mistake, and there doesn't seem to be anybody there to really correct him now because they're all scared of him.
Yeah, I'm just not whole. I wouldn't be like if you were telling me, like if I was telling you this, like if Trump was campaigning right now and Kamala was president, I think we would be having the flipped conversation where I'd be the one pressing into you, like, you think he's going to be able to run again? You think he's going to be able to win? And then you would be the one telling me, like, we can't just put our guard down for Trump.
I'm not
We
saying
can't
to
just
put our
pretend
guard
like he
down,
can't win.
but
Like,
you're guaranteeing 4 years of damage instead of by preferring Trump over Harris. Then you're guaranteeing that rather than putting off the possibility when he's going to have worse odds when he's not running against, mind
'Cause
you,
it's
probably one of the
not just
worst
Trump.
campaigns that has ever been put forward by the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it was really bad. But it's not just Trump. It's the fact that the idea that Trump could run again has so much sway over the direction people go relative to these MAGA ideas in Congress and in state and local elections. It affects what
That's
people
not,
are like
but
running in those
that could
elections.
stay around for years, and having him for 4 years in office gives him a bigger
No, it's a
platform to
hero
push
worship-
around these ideas, to pump these
No, it's
ideas
a
out
hero
there.
worship
Hell,
movement.
Trump
Once
2.0
he
has given
can't-
us a new whole basket of wacky ideas from Trump Incorporated, and so
Yeah,
what you
that
could end
people
up
aren't
doing
buying
is
as much.
backfiring and making these terrible ideas and this terrible discourse last longer because it was in a position of power
that's
for
not what's
longer. They
but
had the
that's not what's
microphone for
happening.
longer.
That's not what's happening. Him having the microphone is actively hurting the ability for MAGA to stick around. That's what we're watching happen. You're seeing his own
That's
people
what they
say Trump is a
That's
fucking
what they
idiot.
said
Trump
for
is the
fucking
Epstein
10
files
years,
is
man.
a liar. He's a pedo
just
president.
keep letting him talk. He'll hang himself. He'll hang himself. Well, this
No,
time
but
he's
we're
truly
watching
did
it
it.
happen right now.
He's still
Like
not even
his-
at his all-time lowest polling rating. He had worst polling
It's-
first term.
Okay, I get the polling rates. I'm sorry, the polling rates just haven't been that great. They haven't given a great look. The polling
I'm
rates made it
sorry
look
that
like
your
Kamala was gonna
vibometer hasn't
win.
been like my number one assorted resource.
Yeah, but hold on. Your resource has also been vibes. You're gonna tell me he
No,
could
I've
win when he's
sorted polls
85
as well.
and he's
I've
gonna,
also
he's
sorted
gonna-
recent election outcomes. I mean, like those are sources.
Again, not when you didn't source recent election outcomes when you said he probably won't be able to run and succeed in 2028 because he's old and because he's
Well, I
flooding.
sorted the fact that Biden could have beaten him if he didn't have all those age problems, and then he lost because he had age problems.
I mean, not he had age problems. The number wasn't the issue. The issue was Biden's specific issue. Biden had like multiple brain surgeries and shit. He was like a uniquely deteriorated person mentally.
What's happening
for
with Trump
a
right
number of
now? Do you
reasons.
think Trump is getting medical help of some sort? I mean, it's clear he is. I'm not
No,
saying
I'm
that
sure
it
he's getting
has
some
to.
medical. I do not think it's this big hoopla. People did that.
I'm
like,
not saying it's a big
AI-enhanced
hoopla. I'm just
picture
saying that
where-
Trump is an old man. He's getting old man stuff
Yeah, that's-
probably. Probably some
Sure.
well, let me finish. Getting some variation of IV drip or something. It could be very routine, but the dude is old. The dude has always talked ridiculously, and if that brain starts to slip a little bit, it's gonna be some Idi Amin style commentary on
Yeah, maybe, but that's
on the
still
on the
vibes.
presidential lectern.
That's still vibes, and I'm willing to engage in that conversation with you about how likely we think that is. But I'm not going to shit on you for thinking the whole conversation we're having is vibes. Polls are not science. They're not. They are not a high standard
What isn't
of evidence.
vibes
They
is
are
that we
essentially
guarantee
a
4
vibe
more years
standard
of Trump
evidence.
damage by having him win in 2024, then instead of putting it off to what I still would think a worse possibility in 2028.
Again, because it's not just about who's president. It's about
Do you think
whether
the Democrats
people
could
think
have
he has
ran a worse
chance, so they
campaign in
become more
2028 than
MAGA.
they did in 2024 under any circumstance? Do you think it would be pretty hard to run a worse campaign?
It would be hard. They could definitely do it.
But you would
it
agree
be
that
hard.
the odds are that they'll probably run a better campaign by at least agreeing who the candidate is by the time the general election comes around, right?
Maybe if they decide to run Newsom, I would say from the gate that's a worse campaign. That's
Really?
just suicide.
I disagree with that. I think
He's just not well liked here. I don't think he's someone who's not that well liked in his own home state is someone you should run when you have
Donald
a Josh
Trump.
Shapiro.
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump isn't an executive in a state.
Donald Trump was
No.
hated in New York City, man.
Sure, but again, it's different when you have governor of California as your title, and California hates
Look,
you.
I understand there's a lot of
this
it,
place
but
that lives in Florida now.
Look, it's
Florida
not,
loves
I'm not
him, and that's his
saying-
real home
I didn't
state.
say Gavin Newsom was a great candidate. All I said was I don't know if he would have worse odds than a midway switcheroo after your presidential nominee that you've assured everyone was of great mental aptitude, fumbled and stumbled with the base. Like you could have given him like a Fisher Price pair of keys up there, and then you have Harris come in, and she doesn't exactly run the most inspired campaign on the planet. I think Gavin Newsom, on a bare level of just being the candidate at the time, and the way that he's a good talker, he is a really good talker. I think he'd be able to run a better campaign on that front. I don't know if his record would bear out anything particularly beneficial for him. But I mean, it depends on who he's running against. If he's running against somebody like J.D. Vance, I give him a good shot. If he's running against somebody that the Republicans actually reel themselves in from, maybe it'll be a little bit more difficult.
I think if he ran against any other like governor, like of a decently reputable red state, like a DeSantis or someone who has like a actually good gubernatorial record, he would get fucking torched. And what we have to remember is he's a good talker in our sense of like, we like political debate, and we're scoring him based on what we know to be sort of the formula for being convincing and sounding impassioned. But when you listen to people talk after, like, about how they feel about Gavin Newsom after he speaks, they're like, sounds like he's a fucking used car salesman. He sounds like a literal movie villain. Like they can tell they're being sold to because his voice drips with so much of that. I am trying to convince you of something right now. So much of the theatrics. I've not met that many people.
Him versus Ron DeSantis, I would actually pay to see that because it'd be interesting. Because I don't think I think everyone would come home so dissatisfied.
I saw the debate that they had, and I mean, Ron DeSantis just did better in that debate, but people kind of said, well, it was because Hannity was a biased moderator because he showed these biased stats, and it was like, no, the stats were just in his favor, and those are the stats that Gavin would have to face if he ran for president. They were like crime stats and education stats and other stats about California that have changed as Gavin Newsom has been the governor. And like these aren't things that he would be able to be in a vacuum from in a general election. Gavin Newsom.
Well, no,
has a terrible
I
record
didn't
in
say Gavin
California.
Newsom would win. I just think any campaign, like we could this is I don't know if I should say that. We could run Tim Kaine in 2028 and it would be better than what we did at this election.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. Because Tim Kaine is a guy where, weirdly enough, especially with that recent SNL thing he did, which I thought was really funny, he's someone, not that recent, like election era recent. He's someone where, like, when he talks, he's a little bit more of a stumbler and a little bit less of like an orator than Gavin, but he at least comes off kind of authentic. And I think that's what people liked about Tim Walz as Kamala's VP.
I did like Tim Walz. I still like Tim Walz.
His platform was just divisive because people saw him as like really progressive. I don't know that he was that bad in that regard, but people liked that authenticity. People liked the J.D. Vance Tim Walz debate because it felt authentic.
Towards his state from the White House since Trump's got inaugurated. Like after those assassinations, like he responded very coldly. Like that took me even a little bit for surprise. I expected a little bit of like my condolences or something to the assassinated family, but it was just basically like, I don't give a fuck.
Oh, I didn't even pay attention to what Trump said about it, to be honest. I don't remember what
he
his
responded
exactly
to it
was.
by like attacking Tim Walz. Like, why would I go there and give condolences to like crazy Tim Walz or like something along those lines?
That's fucking gross. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was pretty
I mean,
bad.
listen, I'm glad that, again, I'm just really glad that he can't run. And I know that it's vibes against vibes, but I'm telling you, what comes next, especially after this last primary that showed that the people who did best that aren't Trump were not Trumpy people, I think we're going to see that pan out again in the next primaries. I think people like the Nikki Haley vibes, where it's someone who seems authentic and seems to give a fuck. You can argue, people like to argue, well, the Republicans aren't going to do a woman of color. Someone like Nikki Haley, I think, is more likely to win than someone like Donald Trump.
I don't know. I still think somebody like JD Vance might be able to edge it out, because somebody might want because it could be that they get a mixture where they want somebody that's respectable, but they also want somebody who ties himself to that anti-establishment cloak. And JD Vance has really tried to wrap himself in that cloak, but he wears a suit and he speaks softly, generally speaking, even if he says crazy things. But because of the way he presents himself, I could see himself at least getting to the final stages of a Republican primary. Whether or not he edges it out, I don't know, because we've never seen him run anywhere outside of his home state of Ohio. So we really have no metric to run by how well he would do outside of polling data, which currently shows him to be the leading candidate. But again, polling data 3 years out from the election means very little at this stage.
They were saying that they've been saying Gavin Newsom is like the most likely dude to win for the Democrats over and over and over and over again.
I mean, he's
like
ahead in the polls,
slates.
but again, it means nothing at this stage. I mean, like, I gotta see him on I gotta see him on a stage with somebody like Tim Walz, and then have Tim Walz just bring up some like stat from California or something, start digging into each other's record, see how he deals with being punched at from the left before getting anywhere close to being punched at from the right. I want to see him be put under pressure. I'm curious. Because
Vance's biggest
the thing is, you described him as a used car salesman. I adore used car salesmen. I adore watching them work. It's very fascinating to me. I'm not saying that they necessarily want them to be president, but I very much would like to see him in a primary.
That's what I was saying, is like, to people like you and me who can like kind of objectively score like what is persuasive sort of formulaically. Like, he can be an interesting guy to watch for sure. As far as the Vance thing, the flavor of person I think is going to keep Vance from getting anywhere in the primaries is your Thomas Massey's, and I think Thomas Massey is going to run in the next primary. He should, if he's not considering it now, because he has the same tie to the anti-establishment shit, but with a refreshing twist, and he's got a Loctite record that is going to be really easy to defend against basically everybody else. He's the one guy who's trying to get the Epstein files released right now. He's the one guy in the Republicans. The Democrats are working with him on it too, which I commend them for. Like Ro Khanna, shout out. But he has a Loctite record.
Did you see that Trump called the Republicans that are trying to release the Epstein files? He said it was a hostile act. And he called Thomas Massey probably because he felt that calling a woman and saying that you trying to release the Epstein files is a hostile act he has enough media sensibility about him to know that probably is a bad look.
Yep. And Massey's about to drop a doc on it. He's about to drop like a whole like mini doc about the process of getting this through. It looks like he did like a whole trailer thing for it. I think Massey is loading up for like a real shot at a primary, which excites me, because Thomas Massey, just like Nikki Haley and even Ron DeSantis, that's a guy where like there's no lesser of two evils in that conversation for me. I would be stoked. I would fall all over myself running to the polls to vote for Thomas Massey. I think
I could never vote for the man. I mean, I understand the dude has a few, but I think his foreign policy is brain dead. I think,
of course, yeah.
I think that obviously I disagree with him on social programs, and there's going to be stuff I find, but he's somebody who I think is probably the least controlled by the administration, who feels that he has enough support at home that he can go out on a limb and make a name for himself as an independent political actor, irrespective of just Trump Incorporated. And the more people that can be encouraged to do that, the better. Not only in order to stop Trump's unconstitutional actions, and so Congress can put itself back in the position as one of our checks in their system of checks and balances, but just because it's better for these parties not to be personality cults.
Well, and an executive who believes in limited power of the executive. It's not just, I understand. I wouldn't say that like you should vote for him, because Democrats have different values, and I think people should vote their values. And you have your own unique.
Well, he would also sign over Ukraine to the Russians.
Sure. I think. Do you think that conflict lasts through 2028? Do You're more informed than I am. So
I
I'm not even
remember
gonna...
a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, I said the earliest it could end would be early 2026.
Okay.
Because I thought that at that point, that's when people would start tiring out. And I think that at this point, 2026, 2027, somewhere in those 2 years is where I'm currently, my head's at.
Okay. But yeah, even then, I can understand why you wouldn't want someone who was ready to, in case of future conflict, that sort of thing. But I think what you could like about him, and at least be hopeful about in terms of him winning primary, is the direction he would pull the Republican Party back toward that just small government, less culture war bullshit, no anti-gay or anti-trans sentiment, really. Like, very much back to bread and butter conservatism, which I know, again, you don't like, but I'm sure you would prefer less of the culture war hoopla.
Prefer people who care about the rules
guns
and institutions that are necessary for us to live in a civilized democracy.
Yeah, which he does, and he's super anti-unitary executive theory. And so I think he could undo a lot of that by gaining power and creating a path for someone like him, who is basically a libertarian with an R next to his name. So
I want to go back to our topic before we wrap up, because we've been talking for a bit, and I think it's time to close the curtains on this, because I got other things I got to talk about. I got to talk my address being posted on the internet. Woo. Anyway,
oh, were you part of the Hasan shit?
Yeah, I was.
Fucking.
It is what it is.
Say retard on Twitch or no?
I mean, I think you can say it. That doesn't mean you should, but you
self-referentially. I just, if there's that word, and then there's also unrelated. There's Hasan. I don't think it was malicious when I saw the clip, but it was so stupid.
I said that too. I don't think it's malicious, and people were telling me I'm giving him too much benefit of the doubt. But I think he had a different. I think it was malicious, but in a different way. I think he wanted to maliciously describe everybody that got paid by PV as like part of Destiny Incorporated and the pro-Israel lobby, when like Lycan was paid by them, and he's extremely pro-Palestine. I am not. They described me as like a Zionist PAC pay. It was like the PAC supported Jamal Bowman. Like, yeah, I don't know how you come to that conclusion, really, unless you're just trying to be a sneaky cunt.
I think his beef with you is probably more on the journalism end of things, because he can't pretend that what he does is journalism when there's a streamer actually doing war tour or journalism. Sorry.
I mean, I think it's. I mean, I don't know if it's that. I mean, that's a possibility. I think that a lot of it is. I don't necessarily believe that I have the best things always to say. Of course, I would talk to Hasan. My position on Hasan has always been he should just talk to Ukrainians. He should just talk to the people that are being affected by this conflict. He seemed perfectly comfortable to do that when it came to the Houthis, but when it came to the people of the Donetsk region, it's been almost going on 4 years now, and he hasn't talked to anybody who's actually living in Ukraine. He's talked to a lot of people outside of Ukraine about Ukraine, but he hasn't talked to anybody inside of Ukraine. And Ukrainians have been generally critical of his commentary, so I think he would gain a lot from talking to a displaced person from the Donetsk region. Really, if I could choose, I wouldn't even talk to Hasan. I would put him in a room with somebody displaced from Donetsk.
Yeah, except he would just say, no, they're not criticizing me because I'm wrong about Ukraine. They're criticizing me because they like Destiny. That was his. Or
thing. They like less Destiny, or they've been misrepresented or misconstrued or something. But at the end of the day, like he would have to sit there and act like a normal person with them for an hour, and that has an impact on you whether you like it or not.
Yeah, no, I think Hasan is like a human. I'm not one of those who hates him so much that he's like. I think he wouldn't be convinced once being in a room just like you. I think he's human. It's just a fucking mess. The doxing shit all over the place has been out of control. I mean, it's just become completely normalized now. I mean, on both sides of that fight, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, dude, it was funny too. People were saying, that's not your address. That's just your zip code. It was like, that's my 9-digit zip code. You fucking moron. Yeah. You don't know what? Do you know what a 9-digit zip code is?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, whatever. Last thing on this before I get onto this topic in the next segment. My main problem, and I understand that you don't like Trump. You want to be done with Trump. right? You want to be done with Trumpism. But I would rather deal with the risk of Trump later than 4 more years of Trump entrenchment now. And your belief that the people will tire of him has been something that I've heard back in 2015 when I was in high school, back in 2020 when the election was coming around again, and then again in 2024, that certainly this time with the charges and X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's true this time, maybe it isn't true. But just because you get tired of Trumpisms and how Trump presents himself in the public doesn't necessarily mean you'll get tired of everything that Trump did that made him popular in the first place, when it comes to how he treated certain institutions, how he talked about the elites, and we'll just say the always vague they element, they who control you, those who have you. You get the idea. These are things that people could easily pick up from Trump and run from Trump. And if he is able to stretch the system, most presidents will find it very hard to look the other way from that temptation of power, let alone if it's a opposition party president who looks at it and says, say a Democrat, and says, fuck, well, he did it for 3 years. Why can't I do it? Why can't I send the National Guard to make sure that the laws are enforced, X, Y, and Z? Why can't I try to do, why can't I send people to foreign prisons irrespective of court decisions? Why can't I send college students who said something racist about me to prison because, I mean, he's a German, he's not American, he doesn't have rights. It's not hard for me to see this playing out in a way that is going to be doing long-term damage, because all the time people look at our constitution different ways, look at our legal system, trying to find exceptions, trying to find loopholes. And even if this thing slumbers, is it hard for me to imagine if he gets some weird court decision in the next 2 years, 50, 60 years down the road, someone, remember when Trump got that court decision that allowed him to take this action? That's the thing that scares me about Trump's lawyers. That's the thing that scares me about Trump. It isn't that we're going to get Trump 3.0. It's the man who comes after Trump and how they react to the wreckage that Trump created.
Sure.
And so the less the time he's in office, the better, especially considering the time he is in office, which you agree with, he does tremendous damage, and he has cost many lives.
This time, yeah. I didn't have nearly as many problems with Trump 1. I kind of overall liked Trump 1. But Trump 2 has been irrefutably awful, and anyone who says it's not is that word that I shouldn't say. But yeah, I'll leave off on, it really does just come down to which one of us is right about what happens. I think that Trump unknowingly has opened the door to a different flavor of anti-establishment guy. I think Thomas Massie would never have had a chance in his entire life to run for president. And right now, I think he actually has a really good chance of winning a primary, because the anti-establishment political climate has reopened that door. Libertarians have sucked historically running, whether they ran as Republicans or otherwise. But I think you see the independent media that leaned hard for Trump is already interviewing a bunch of Democrats and interviewing a bunch of non-super aligned with Trump Republicans as well. And I think the through line you see with the people that are coming up in those channels, which is really what I see an appetite for in the public at large, is dudes that are normal dudes that have clear principles now that they're outlining. Because I think people realize that while Trump had clear enemies, he didn't have very clear principles that they could hold him to. And I think a lot of what you're seeing from people now is they want to know what you actually believe. They don't want to have a guy that's just an attack dog anymore, and they're getting tired of that. And I think that's what guys like Vivek or a MAGA-flavored Vance are really going to struggle with, is no clear principles that people can hold them to.
That's true. Definitely for someone like Vivek, who just kind of fell out of the sky. That's also something I think is going to be a problem for JD, is the fact that, like, it wasn't that long ago when he was saying Trump is heroin, right? And if you were raised by an opioid addict and you're saying that, that's actually quite a statement. I do agree that I hope you're right. That's what I'll tell you.
And you got to think of,
I hope you're right. I hope you're right, Jeb.
We talk about
but I think you might actually follow in the footsteps of your predecessor.
My predecessor? Who's my predecessor?
Jeb.
Oh, Bush.
Yes.
No, listen, I don't have to ask people to clap. They clap. All right. No, but I think the other thing you got to think about as well with like Democrats, people always talk about how splitting the vote is really bad and how you need to be unified. You got to think in a Republican primary, you've got sort of the MAGA and the non-MAGA, and the non-MAGA now outnumbers the MAGA by just a touch. But you're going to have so many fucking bottom-feeding losers trying to do the Trump thing and fighting for that MAGA vote that I think the MAGA vote's also just going to get super fractured. And whoever just can retain primary support from just the regular ass people who have voted Republican every time since forever is probably going to win out. That's the other reason why. Just practically, I think the numbers work better in the favor of someone like Nikki Haley or Thomas Massie, or even DeSantis again if he gets a better fucking campaign team this time. Because he did bad, but he didn't do bad in a way that was memorable enough to where if he does well speaking next time, it's going to be a problem for him. He didn't say anything silly or stupid. He just looked really awkward on stage and was quiet.
He didn't have a good stage presence, but that's sometimes the hardest thing to teach, actually. So it's
sure, yeah.
Whether or not he can improve on it is gonna, you know, I like for example, I'll watch boxers that like spend so much time practicing they just can't get it. There's a certain moves they can't get, they just can't learn it, and so Ron DeSantis, he kind of gives me that Plank vibe.
He's really good when attacked. But
yeah, he does aggro well. He just doesn't do like, let's get a beer together, bro. Like he can't do that well. He can't.
I think the other candidates did such a good job. Their campaign teams were on it. They were like, just don't talk to him. Make a monologue. Don't give him anything. He's got the record. He's gonna win on record. So just don't attack Ron. Talk over him. Talk past him. Attack everybody else on the stage. Get your speaking time. And make him like have to awkwardly insert his opinion on things, and that's what it worked so well because he would literally just kind of be like, and also what I think about that, and people were just like kind of he just came off as like someone giving a presentation in elementary school.
Well, I think we've been talking for over 2 hours now, so I think it's time to wrap it up. Thank you for coming on today's show. We'll describe you. I know in the title we described you as a Trump voter. I will word that and I'll say you're a Trump accelerationist.
Yes, I want him to be gone.
Trump accelerationism.
Yeah,
fixing the system to breaking it.
But I'm glad you're doing all right. I'm glad it looks like you've got a setup after. I hope you get, restitution for the fire stuff. I'm sorry that happened to you again. Yeah,
it sucks. Trump did that.
Yep. Those goddamn, he attacked the DEI firefighters and there was no one around to help anymore.
Yeah, it was true. I had to wait until the Proud Boys came over with a water bucket. That's all. They're servicing my area now. Okay, you have a good one, man. See you later.
See you, man.
Bye-bye. Ba-da-bop. Ba-da-bop. Ba-da-bop-ba-bow. Ba-da-bop-ba-ba-ba-ba-bow. Yay. Segment done. Oh boy, we got some other things we got to get through. A lot of news we still got to get through at 9:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for anybody who got lost in today's conversation. Ba-da-ba-ba-bow, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bow, ba-da-ba-ba-bow, ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bow. Okay, so I am going to go to get something to drink. I feel like a nice cold ginger ale right now, honestly. So I'll be right back. I will leave you guys, since we were just talking about elections in 2025, I'll leave you guys with Karnacki. Karnacki, how do you say it? The guy the wine moms all freaked out over during election season over his data on MSNBC. Anyway, he has some more data for you guys on the 2026 election. Oh no, the 2025 special election, sorry. And how they could be used as a framework to judge Trump's performance at this point. Be right back with my drinks, and then we're going to cover the Epstein victims, them coming forward, and some other news as well. I do think we also are going to give an update, just like a little small update on the Hasan docs, because some people are asking questions, and I want to put some clarification out there because some people were a little confused. Okay, I'll be right back.
For Labor Day, it's the unofficial start of fall, kicking off the unofficial sprint to election night 2025. And even though it's an off year, there are key gubernatorial and mayoral races up for grabs. And all of it is being closely watched by both parties heading into next year's midterms. Today in the race for New Jersey governor, Republican Jack Ciattarelli is launching his first TV ad of the general election, trying to deflect Democrats' attempts to tie him to President Trump.
We all know it. New Jersey's a mess. And all Mikey Sherrill wants to talk about is President Trump. Come on. What does the president have to do with rising property taxes and higher electricity bills? New Jersey's a mess because out-of-touch politicians like Bill Murphy and Mikey Sherrill care more about pronouns and sanctuary cities than they do solving our problems.
And Democrat Mikey Sherrill is expected to launch her first general election ad tomorrow. And while Ciattarelli is attacking his opponent for leaning in on Trump, Virginia's Republican candidate for governor is taking a page directly from Trump's 2024 playbook. Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears' campaign releasing a new digital ad today attacking Democrat Abigail Spanberger on the issue of transgender rights with a tagline saying, quote, Spanberger is for they, them, not for us. NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki joins me now from the big board with more on the key races to follow.
Can I just say that everybody who says that line, they're for they, them, not for us, like it is this thing. The perfect example of just the framing of us versus them narrative. They're trans, they're them, literally. And therefore, they're the enemy. They're either for trans people or they're for your working family. You either get trans rights or you get health care. You either get trans rights or you get a good pension. You either get trans rights or you get roads with no potholes. You either get trans rights or you get good public transportation. You either get trans rights or you get low taxes. Those are your options. That's the dilemma. They're either for they, them, the stuff that doesn't matter, how all these people are dealing with their gender, or you. Mind you, trans people have a terribly high suicide rate, have a high homelessness rate. They have quite a high drug abuse rate due to both of course, a mental health crisis, high rates of depression. They are a community that isn't exactly going through it when it comes to power and influence. But they're the different thing that's easier to target, easier to attack. A lot of people don't know trans people. And so when you're behind, just try to tie Abigail Spanberger or whoever the candidate is with trans people so you'll think they're going to be dealing with bathroom issues and not the stuff that really matters, even though the vast majority of time spent about talking about trans people in bathrooms or really even talking about trans people on the campaign period it's more dominated by Republicans these days than Democrats. I don't really see many Democrats on the campaign trail going front first, leading from the front. I'm not even saying this is a good thing, but leading from the front when it comes to trans rights. It's just more like kind of like a passive thing that they would vote on, which might actually, I don't know if that is the strategy or if it's better to be bolder on it or if it's better to treat it so casually so they look like the one that's flipping out about somebody's choice about their own body. But either way, it's very us versus them. It's a very, very good example of it.
Over the next 2 months. And Steve, Republicans sound optimistic.
Oh, it's also, of course, it's very evil. Every time I hear somebody say it, I feel like breaking my TV because it is setting the public against trans people for electoral points. And most of them are smart enough to know what they're doing.
About winning the New Jersey gubernatorial election. How realistic is that?
Yeah, let's take a look at these races, sort of the four.
What the fuck is this audio quality? I gotta fix this. There we go.
We'll get to this four, actually, sort of centerpiece races here in the fall of 25 and start on those governor's races. Now, look, it's Winsome Earl Sears in Virginia and Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey. These two Republicans each have two pretty big obstacles in their way. First is simply each one of them is running in a blue state. Donald Trump lost Virginia by about 6 points last year. So there's the partisan tide that Earl Sears is up against. And then there's also the tide of history. 11 of the last 12 Virginia gubernatorial races have been won by the party that does not control the White House.
Right now in Virginia, the governor is Glenn Youngkin. And so history would dictate that it flips over to the Democrats. Also, I want to say that 6 out of 7 elections where one party won the governor races going into the midterms, that party then sweeps those midterms. So typically, if you win these gubernatorial elections in the year preceding the midterm, that's a good indicator, a canary in the coal mine, if you will, of you performing very well in the midterms. We're up in New Jersey, and we're up in, oh God, I'm trying to remember. Oh, in Virginia, of course. That's where this one is.
House. It really seems that these off-year gubernatorial elections function, at least in part, as a referendum on the president. And Donald Trump's approval rating in Virginia, there was a poll out just a couple weeks ago that had him at about 40% approval in Virginia. So it's a blue state to start with. Trump's not that popular in Virginia, and it tends to be that the party that controls the White House struggles in Virginia gubernatorial elections. All of those obstacles for Earl Sears. You see, this is that poll here, Roanoke poll from a couple weeks ago, that has her 7 points behind Abigail Spanberger. So, you know, it's a competitive race, but you see here, to defy history here, Earl Sears is going to have to find a way here, I think, to sort of alter how these things typically go in Virginia. That is true for Chitterelli in New Jersey as well. Again, it's a blue state. Trump lost this state, and it also has that history of voting in the gubernatorial race for the party that doesn't control the White House. All of those advantages for Mikey Sherrill, a Democrat, all of those disadvantages for Chitterelli. This is a Rutgers Eagleton Institute poll just about a week ago that had a 9-point advantage for Sherrill over Chitterelli here. Now, the one thing Chitterelli may have working in his favor that Earl Sears does not have in Virginia is the governor of New Jersey now, Phil Murphy, is a Democrat. He's being term limited out. His popularity is, you know, lukewarm at best, in the 40s in polling. And New Jersey also does not have a history.
So in Virginia, 7 points up for Democrats. In New Jersey, it's 9 points.
Of giving the same party the governorship.
This election is in 2 months. It's in November.
Straight elections. That's what Sherrill, a Democrat, is trying to pull off here. So that maybe complicates it a little bit in New Jersey. Now, I said 4 marquee races this fall we're watching. The third one then would be the New York City mayoral election here, seeing the most recent poll. And honestly, this thing has sort of been stuck in the same place ever since the Democratic primary. Zoran Mamdani won that in the big upset. Andrew Cuomo is running as an independent. Eric Adams, the incumbent mayor, is
Eric
an independent.
Adams at 7% under the Republican. Oh, God. Oh, poor Eric. Bad times for Eric Adams. My God. My goodness. How the mighty have fallen is at the safety gun video. I'm not going to make you guys watch it again, but God, I love that video.
He was the Republican. Mamdani, he's got plenty of baggage here. You know, he's an avowed socialist. He's had some provocative pronouncements, to put it mildly. But the opposition to him is splintered, and there are profound political liabilities for all 3 of these opponents as well. So as long as the picture is kind of muddled here, and as long as these 3, particularly Adams and Cuomo, are as unpopular as they are, you can see Mamdani just kind of floats above it all right here by virtue of being the Democratic nominee in a very Democratic city. And then there's the 4th one we're keeping an eye on, and we weren't even expecting this to be an election at the start of the year. It is California. It is Gavin Newsom's attempt. He's going to need voter approval this November to do it, to blow up the congressional maps in California, to put more Democratic seats in there. He says he's doing this in response to Texas and their mid-decade gerrymandering on behalf of Republicans.
So we were talking to Jeb Tan just a second ago about the popularity of about the morality of California going tit to tat with the Texas Republicans, and he was telling me how people in California hate it, but it looks like the majority of Californians actually, well, at least a plurality, support it with a 20% undecided middle ground.
So that's going to go to the voters this November. A poll came out that asked about this, that said the initial support at 48%. 32% opposition. You say maybe that's starting in a strong place for Newsom, but remember, not a Democrat-Republican race. This is a yes-no race, and yes is starting out under 50%. And the challenge for Newsom's opponents here is, can they just make enough arguments against this that get people to say, you know, it's too much, it's easier to vote no. Sometimes that's how these referendums go. So there's volatility in this California race, I think, to a degree we don't see anywhere else, Gabe.
Well, Steve Kornacki, thank you.
We thank you for watching, and remember...
Thank you, NBC. Okay. Let's keep going. What do we got next? Oh, do we go straight into Epstein survivors? Or we could talk about the gunboat. I do want to talk about the boat that got struck. We'll do that. Then maybe we'll do the Hasan update and then Jeffrey Epstein. Sure, we can go in that order. So I don't know if you guys saw, but we got the first confirmed casualties from Trump's military deployment across the coastline of Venezuela, where they've deployed 4,000 soldiers, including 2,200 U.S. Marines, in gunboats along the coastline. And what seems like an instance of what you could call gunboat diplomacy, maybe type of forceful intimidation to send a message to the Venezuelan government, while they claim has to do with a type of drug enforcement operation. But many people interpret it as a type of forceful diplomacy. But we do have the first instance of a military strike for this operation being actually done by U.S. sailors. As you can see here, this is the U.S. military destroying a claimed, and I am saying claimed, because we have yet to see any other evidence besides the claims of the United States government, and claimed Venezuelan drug boat, supposedly transporting drugs, that was destroyed by the U.S. military, as you can see from this video. Now, supposedly, there were 11 people taken out in this strike. Now, 11 people is a lot for a boat like that. Definitely, if you're trying to transport drugs, I don't know why you would have 11 people on a vehicle like that to transport drugs. I don't know if Trendiagua needs those many people on a boat, because that's who the narco terrorists is how Fox News is putting it, in line with how the administration is framing it. So JD Vance was asked about what legal authority these strikes were done under, because we haven't declared war on Venezuela. We haven't declared war in South America. There was no vote in Congress. And so what is the legal authority by which the president of the United States is having his troops go and bomb boats along the Venezuelan coast, irrespective if they are or are not drug boats? Now, JD Vance responded. One second. I think I can find this video quick. Here it is. What legal authority were you guys working under? And he responded by saying that they were terrorists, and that was a legal authority. Let me show you the video. And I'll explain what he means by this, because we've talked about this type of framing before and how it'll be a useful legal tool for the Trump administration.
With this.
On the Venezuela vessel, vessel strike, what legal...
One second. It is super low in volume. Let's see if we can bump it up a little.
With this.
On the Venezuela vessel, vessel strike, what legal authority were you guys working under, and will there be an after report on the strike?
Well, I'm sure there's going to be an after report. I mean, the legal authority, and I want to talk about these kids, is that there are people who are bringing literal terrorists who are bringing deadly drugs into our country, and the President of the United States ran on a promise of stopping this poison from coming into our country.
None of that was legal authority. Now, when someone talks about legal authority, someone might reference something like the AUMF, the Authorization for Use of Military Force, which you could give. They could draw up an AUMF saying, hey, Congress has said the President of the United States is allowed to do war against cartels in Latin America because we have determined that the drug crisis is so bad. Like the AUMF that was used in the Middle East to fight against terrorism after 9/11, which was voted on and approved by Congress. There were some that complained about the far-reaching language of the AUMF, but the time people, at least the ones that voted, said that, we needed to act quick, we needed to act fast, we needed to move. And so we did. Now, the use of the word terrorist is being stretched here, because most people would not think of a cartel smuggler immediately like a terrorist. Most people wouldn't think of a drug peddler immediately like a terrorist. But this descriptor has two meanings, right? Let's talk about the really good faith meaning. One is that a lot of these groups are so substantial and so powerful and so ruthless that describing them in the same language that you would a common drug gang could misconstrue the influence that they have, which reaches into the government. They have extremely powerful armed forces, which have really strong armaments. They have grenade launchers. They have armored vehicles. They have RPGs. They, of course, have rifles. They, of course, have all sorts of vehicles, like helicopters and elsewise. And they're stretched all across Mexico. They're stretched into other countries as well. And these are influential organizations who, when people resist against them, they can do quite brutal things against them, like medieval torture or terrorism. Some might describe when you do like bombings or shootings or assassinations, however you would want to describe it. Now, some would call that terrorism, and that's why they want to call them narco-terrorists. Another reason people call them narco-terrorists is because they want to stretch the AUMF for the Middle East. The authorization for use of military force after 9/11 was to fight terrorists. And if you can stretch the AUMF to cover that definition, to cover more and more and more territory, then you don't need to ask Congress. You can just use Congress's prior permission. Now, did Congress from the early 2000s approve Trump assassinating Soleimani in Iraq, unrelated to the 9/11 attacks, even if he was over there helping out Assadist militias that were doing bad things or whatever? No, they did not vote on that. But that's how the AUMF was used. And so by describing these organizations as terrorists, and by the president designating these organizations as terrorist organizations, you can use the authorization of use for military force that we went into Afghanistan with, that we fought Al-Qaeda with, in order to go after Tren de Aragua, or to go after any other number of narco-terrorist organizations, which could just be defined as really any cartel that deals in drugs. I mean, I don't know what standard by which how brutal or not brutal they would have to get in order to earn that designation. It's not like JD Vance is really classifying it much here. All he said is they had legal authority because they were bringing drugs into the country. So drug smuggling, anywhere that's smuggling drugs into the United States, we can respond with military force. What if that drug smuggling is happening in a foreign country? Could we say just bomb Mexico? Instead of trying to confiscate it at the border, do we try to stop it before it even gets at the border? Try to stop any risk of it entering whatsoever and just bomb them across the border. Maybe it'll hit some civilians. Hopefully not. Either way, will they coordinate that with the Mexican government? I mean, in the 2024 election, there was talk about military interventionism in Mexico. We've had a lot of discussion about Canada being the 51st state. We've had a lot of discussion about annexing Greenland, which I do think the president really does want the prestige that comes with that type of territorial expansion. And as the polar ice caps continue to melt, you know, maybe it gives some help when it comes to trade routes. And, you know, it's a good midway point between North America and Europe. But what I was hearing the most murmurs about from people who are in the know was military interventionism in Latin America, was people in Trump's orbit wanting to use the power of the United States armed forces to go fight cartels, regardless of if the governments themselves want them to. For example, if you drone another country, I mean, what is that country going to do? Is Mexico going to drone America back? Probably not. They might not work with us when it comes to boots on the ground, and us putting boots on the ground could end up being an absolute disaster. But drone strikes, air strikes, that seems much more in the realm of possibility. Low risk for the person firing the bomb. Low risk for the administration that doesn't have to put any troops on the ground. High risk for the side that's receiving the bomb. And the real risk is probably to America and Mexico's diplomatic relationship, which Mexico does have to keep to some respect because, well, we're the most powerful country on the planet and we are their direct neighbor. So point is, there seemed to be some feeling that we could basically go after the cartels irrespective if the home governments wanted us to work with them or not, and we could essentially maybe ignore them even when taking certain military actions. And what is going to be the groundwork for this? The terrorist designation, the AUMF, the authorization for use of military force against terrorists in the Middle East now being stretched to take out drug dealers bringing in drugs into the United States. Quite a legal adventure we've taken. I want to fight Al-Qaeda. Great, we're now fighting the cartels in Venezuela. What? I don't remember voting for that. Do. You know what leverage Mexico has? Canning facilities of Mountain Dew. Is that true? They could cut off our Mountain Dew supplies. That is significant leverage. That is very significant leverage, in fact. Okay, I think it's time to talk about the Epstein survivors. Coke often gets smuggled to Europe via Africa. Yeah, there's some pretty famous drug smuggling routes in Africa.
A curd is a curd.
8D5D2 Derek has donated $5. Hey, did you see the email I sent about that NASA stuff?
Hey, I don't know when you sent it, but I did not see it, but I'll take a look at it. NASA employees fear worsening conditions as Trump administration executive order eliminates their right to unionize. I did talk about that on yesterday's stream. I did talk about Trump going after the right for federal workers to unionize. We did briefly touch on NASA, but we just kind of named it as one of many agencies that are being targeted. Dylan, talk about Reagan? Not today. You always ask and you'll never get. Okay, let's keep going. I want to talk about the Epstein survivors. Oh, wait. The Hasan update. I guess I did put that in the title. I should give you guys an update. So apparently it hasn't gone like really viral, but there's a few accounts that have been posting stories about the docs that gets reposted online. This is just one example. Let me read it to you. It's just been revealed that Hasan doxed multiple Twitch streamers live on his own stream. The creators he doxed includes Hutch, Lycan, Lonerbox, Xander Hall, The Pondering, I'm Really Important, Dylan Burns. Oh, who's they? And Hunter Avalon. He showed their full names and some of their addresses on stream for prolonged periods, minutes at a time, in front of an average of 30,000 viewers. 660,000 people have viewed the VOD. He did this while smearing many as paid pro-Israel shills, an archetype of a person he has radicalized his audience into believing deserves to be killed. Now, look, I didn't pick this particular tweet for any reason. There's a few others that I could have picked. So I want to throw a few clarifications out there, right? Because I've already given my full view yesterday, but I wanted to clarify a few things. Okay, first thing, Hasan did not show anybody's full home address. Now, he didn't do much better. He did show people, including my 9-digit zip code. Now, if you show somebody's 9-digit zip code, now most people know about 5-digit zip codes. 9-digit zip codes is essentially going to show them where the street you live on. And he showed that completely uncensored on his stream. So he didn't put my full house address. You would just have to click the tweet that he was showing on stream, or go to the documents that were being showed in the video he was showing on stream, and there you could find the full home addresses of me and other creators that were included in the leaks. So I wanted to put that clarification first out there because, you know, there is a difference between the full home address being on there and the 9-digit zip code, even if that difference is not in leaps and bounds, and the full home address was not that far away from being shared anyway, since it was, you know, the source to it was literally on stream. As for the paid pro-Israel shills, I listened a little bit to it, it seemed that the way that the pack was being characterized is as an extension of like Destiny. Destiny did not manage the pack. Destiny was not involved in managing the pack. Destiny did not support Jamal Bowman. The pack supported, Progressive Victory supported Jamal Bowman. They supported a bunch of candidates that are not pro-Israel or not considered pro-Israel. Jamal Bowman probably being the most radical example, who lost his re-election race. So I just, this description of the organization I don't think is fair. You could talk about individual people who worked with Progressive Victory as being associates with Destiny, or not being as pro-Palestine as you would want. Maybe that you could do. But when we talk about the organization itself, I cannot think of anybody in Congress that is more pro-Palestine than Jamal Bowman. And they were going out there to campaign for him and to canvass for him when his numbers were looking bad and it looked like he was going to lose. So they went out to fight for Jamal Bowman when Jamal Bowman was at his worst as one of the most pro-Palestine legislators in Congress. So I don't really agree with this characterization of Progressive Victory. If you want to characterize any individual person who worked with Progressive Victory or Destiny in and of himself as himself or something else, fine. But Progressive Victory is its own thing. And I also see a lot of people getting Progressive Victory confused with the other organization that Taylor Lorenz wrote about, which I know a lot less about because I never did any work with them and I know nothing about them. Also, Taylor Lorenz's article was behind a paywall, so I only got to watch a little bit of her video. Besides that, I also wanted to throw out there that some people were throwing out like, hey, Dylan, because people were really digging. If I look up your name and I scroll enough, maybe I can find this or this social, which says where your hometown is and you care about your zip code. Again, this is a problem of people not knowing the difference between a 5-digit and a 9-digit zip code. These are two very different things. Trashomanthers, thank you so much for the 38 months. As someone who lives in your walls, I find the prospect of you being doxxed very disconcerting. I would imagine, Trashomancer. Please stop the scratching, though. I do want to sleep. I would like to sleep just a little bit. Okay. Besides that, I don't really have much more to say. I guess I'll respond to one common theme that I saw in the replies to the video that was posted, which was the idea that I give Hasan too much benefit of the doubt. That might be true. But I don't view it necessarily as me trying to convince I don't need to convince myself anything about Hasan. I'm talking to an audience. When I make a video, I'm not talking to myself. Even though I might conversate casually and I might not put on the biggest performance ever in any individual video, I understand I'm speaking to an audience. And when I'm speaking to an audience, I want to make sure that I talk about the most good faith interpretation of Hasan's points, or anybody's points, really. And I deal with that first before we can talk about any worse interpretations or worse faith interpretations that may or may not be true, so that we know that we can stand up against the worst type of behavior, or we can stand up against the best version of any argument, irrespective of the conversation, whether it has to do with drama or it has to do with just like regular politics. So when it came to me saying, for example, some people said that it was purposeful that he was that he was showing our 9-digit zip codes and that he was showing a pretty easy source for people to go get our addresses. And people thought I was being a little bit too charitable, or really a lot too charitable, by saying that that may not be malicious, or I don't think it was malicious, which I still don't think it was malicious. I'm not saying that I even think that he cares. I'm not even saying that he is apologetic about it or anything. What I am saying is that it's very easy for me to see in Hasan's mind, oh my God, all these people, some of which who are associated with a streamer I do not like, Destiny, even though it might be like they're associated through a call that they had maybe like once a year, where it's not even like a strong, but since they're associated in any manner whatsoever, this seems to be an operation of his and Israel, because if they're paying money, why are they paying money to these smaller streamers I mean, I guess he could just see it as like a buying of influence operation, and he thinks he's exposing it by showing the money amounts that everybody got paid. So I can interpret it that way. And even in that way, it's still stupid. It's still bad. What happened was still wrong. Even if it's majority, like obviously Progressive Victory's fault, but I don't need to like interpret it as Hasan maliciously did this so people would harass me and swat me and someone would come and shoot me. It's much easier for me to be like, you know, he was being irresponsible. He probably doesn't care. I don't think he's going to like say he shouldn't have done that. I don't think he's going to reel back his behavior. And even in the best interpretation of this, obviously this still is having a negative impact on my life. I think it's much easier to make that argument before I could say anything about any maliciousness that I could or could not assume based on any other information. So either way, I think it's easier for me to just talk about the best interpretation rather than worst interpretation. Okay. I don't really think I have anything else to say about that. The only other clarification I could think of is no, I don't really have anything else to say. Is there any other questions? Why are you all stuck nice on the defensive? Just talking about the situation doesn't change anything. You're all stuck to perma defense. What do you mean, like, what am I supposed to do? Hasan is a cyber terrorist who showed my 9-digit zip code because he wants one of his schizo fans to come over and shoot me with a Mosin Nugget that they got from Milsurp Roleplay. Like, what am I? Mosin Nugget. Sorry. Am I supposed to like what am I supposed to do? Like there's no reason for me to like overly panic because I can't really like manifest like I'm in deep fear. My address. I can't manifest that. I'm in a pretty safe neighborhood. I think people could use it to try to harass me, but I don't know how determined people would even be about that. I like go on the offense. What am I supposed to do? I have no interest in like doxing Hasan back. I've seen people trying to do that in the replies. I don't think that's good. I don't think people should do that. I have no interest in like showing his 9-digit zip code or showing like this. That doesn't do anything. So I think the only thing I can do is just say it's bad behavior. It shouldn't happen. That nobody should trust bad empanada to be exactly responsible when dealing with anybody's private information. And yeah, that's really it. I mean, again, most of my anger, I don't even know what would be what I would call it at this point, because I knew about this like 6 or 7 or 8 months ago, and I just was kind of waiting to see what streamer would be the one to or what person would be the one. I thought it'd be like on Kiwi Farms or something. I didn't think it would end up being Hasan. That'd be the one that would grab onto it and throw this out there. I don't know how, but you're stuck in a loop forever then. This isn't like a video game where if I just, okay, Hasan, I hope you're listening. I disagree. I think your conduct was not reputable. What do you think happens? I already made my position clear. I already, said what happened. It is what it is. Yeah, I need a thumbnail. Hasan wants me shot. Gonna execute me. Just not that important. Just wanted to give clarification. The biggest thing that was angering me yesterday was people saying it was just a zip code. Nobody wants their 9-digit zip codes posted anywhere. 5-digit zip code, already given a lot of information, okay? 9-digit zip code, you're basically on their front porch. Combine that with an article with video footage of my house burning down, or just the article that he was, the tweet that he was showing on screen, which you could go through to go find my actual address. Not good. Okay, next story. Let's talk about the Jeffrey Epstein victims. That's why you need guns, Dylan. I had guns. Then my house burned down. Now I don't have any guns. And until I got the insurance money to give me back my money for my lost guns, I don't got gun money. Barely got doc money, not let alone gun money. Fire took my guns. People told me it'd be the Democrats. It was the fire all along. The Democrats were always a smokescreen for the fire. Gun grabbing fires, taking my guns. It sucks too because people like the idea that you lost your guns in a house fire. That's like house fire and boating incident are like the two gimmicks in order to like hide your guns and like tell the government you don't have guns when you have guns. But I actually lost my guns in a house fire. What a bummer. And I can't tell a cop that without them being like, sure, true. Did you really? True, and it actually happened to you? Yeah, no, it actually happened. Okay, let's talk about the Epstein survivors. Oh, also, one last clarification. Some people were saying that since the PV publicly filed the information, even if they weren't supposed to, obviously their mistake, that therefore it is not against Twitch TOS for people to show it. That's not true. Twitch TOS explicitly dictates, and I only know this because people showed me after. Still not calling for anybody to get their accounts removed, just saying. But Twitch TOS explicitly says that even if the information has otherwise been made public, that doesn't mean you can share it on Twitch. So no matter how that information got out there, you're not supposed to share it around. Okay. Now on to the Epstein victims. So Thomas Massie is co-sponsoring a piece of legislation with Democrat Ro Khanna and others that is a bipartisan piece of legislation, even though obviously much more Democrats are signed on than Republicans. Getting Republicans signed on is the hard part. Pushing for a discharge petition in order to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. Now, this has caused quite a panic in Washington and the White House. Mind you, many of you might have forgotten that Mike Johnson and the Republicans literally shut down Congress in order to stop a vote on the release on the Jeffrey Epstein files. And so, once again, having the possibility of a discharge petition, which is a rare tool used in Congress, even though it's been used more and more in recent years, is a rare tool, or supposed to be, used in Congress that allows a simple majority of Congress people to sign a petition saying that they want a vote on something, overrides the House Speaker, and whether or not he gets to decide if legislation gets brought to the floor. Because regularly, the way it usually works is that the Speaker of the House, who currently is Mike Johnson, strong Trump ally, is the one who decides what comes to the House floor and what doesn't. Now, he does not want to bring this legislation to the House floor because he does not want to release the Jeffrey Epstein files for whatever reason, due to whatever is in them. And so the only way to get it out there, Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna have figured, is through a discharge petition. Now, they already have half of the votes that are necessary to get there. And so that's causing some concern amongst Republicans. And so they have introduced a other piece of legislation, a kind of, a competing piece of legislation that essentially says, hey, look, we want justice for the Epstein victims, so we applaud what the DOJ is doing. It really doesn't do anything. It just reaffirms the fact that the DOJ should continue to investigate, and that they affirm that it's good that they're doing that. So it doesn't release any files. It doesn't force the release of any files. It means that there would be no more. It means that they could continue to drag their feet. Whereas if the Thomas Massie Roe Conner proposal went through the House and went through the Senate, well, now you're in a different situation. So this situation is happening, this piece of legislation, at the same time that Epstein survivors are speaking at Capitol Hill, having private meetings with legislators, trying to get them to sign on to the discharge petition and to work towards the release of the information. At the same time, Donald Trump is trying to crush this discharge petition. Here is Thomas Massie, a Republican, a pretty strong right Republican in the House, responding to the president, who he says called him on the phone and trying to intimidate him to back off the discharge petition. Mind you, him and a bunch of other women signed on. He's the only man. I think the president might have understood the optics of calling a woman and telling her to stop looking in to the most notorious sex criminal in American history might be a problem. Either way, here's what Thomas Massie had to say about it. White House says helping me secure a vote to release all the Epstein files is a hostile act. They're threatening anyone who helps bring true transparency and justice for the survivors. This is a tacit admission. The Oversight Committee data release is woefully incomplete. Now, if you go look at what has been released by the Oversight Committee, because they have released stuff on the Oversight Committee, this is what they've released. Take a good look. Absorb this information. The answers that we have long been seeking have henceforth arrived. Blackout line over blacked out line, and the only stuff that wasn't blacked out and censored from this supposed release by the Oversight Committee is information that was already public. So information we already knew and a bunch of blacked out information, meaning we're right back where we started and another smoke screen to distract you. And this is what the Republicans and House leadership would rather reaffirm than going through with the discharge petition, which not only, of course, would release the Epstein files, but also probably be an embarrassment for Mike Johnson that they were able to overrule him. But at the same time this is all going on, as Thomas Massie is pushing this through, Epstein survivors are meeting with legislators. Epstein survivors are speaking on the Hill, and they say that they have the names, that they're done waiting for Congress to congregate a list of names and release them to the public. They're done waiting for the Epstein files to be released by an administration who very clearly does not want to release them. So they are simply going to get together. They're going to say who they know regularly used Jeffrey Epstein's services and the services of his fixer, Ghislaine Maxwell. And they will release that information to the general public for you and I to peruse in order to get the justice that they deserve. Now, mind you, I doubt every single Jeffrey Epstein survivor is going to take part in this. I doubt that they're going to name every single person. If what they said is true, they're going to name regular clients of Epstein. So somebody who might have been there once or twice and then didn't come back, maybe they won't be included. And the people who had tacit knowledge but did not engage. Say somebody who's invited to a party, sees what's going on at one of Epstein's parties, and then goes back to polite society, never saying anything because they'd rather not have the enemies than take a moral stand. Those types of people might be left out of the information, might be left out of the list. This is why, irrespective of the fact if they release a list of 100 names, I still want the Epstein files to be released to the general public, because there could still be names, there could still be information, there could still be knowledge denied to the general public that could be useful. Here is a Epstein survivor, Haley Robson, talking about President Trump. Now, this is in response to specifically the president referring to it as a hoax. You know what? I think it might actually make sense to first start with... No, we'll start with what she said, because first they said this, and then the president immediately said what I'll play for you in a second afterwards.
The president has
And this is part of a long track record Trump has of calling the Epstein stuff a hoax. For the last few weeks and months, he's been hyping up that rhetoric because after the campaign trail and the immediate usefulness of saying, sure, release the Epstein files, once that drained, and there was actually time to release the Epstein files, it's been nothing but Democrat hoax this, Democrat hoax that. But we all know that isn't the case. Even most of his supporters know it isn't the case. It's crazy how little questions are being asked, though.
This Epstein issue is a hoax, is the words that he used. Can we get...
answer that. Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma.
What does it feel like emotionally to hear that?
Devastating.
It's being gutted from the inside out. Not that I would know what that feels like, but I imagine it's the anxiety buildup with the depression and the survival mode, and then your nervous system goes limp and ironically is shot. And it feels like you just want to explode inside because nobody, again, is understanding that this is a real situation. These women are real. We're here in person. To say that it's a hoax is just not... Please humanize us. I would like Donald J. Trump and every person in America and around the world to humanize us, to see us for who we are and to hear us for what we have to say. There is no hoax. The abuse was real. Now, what goes on behind closed doors, I can't speak for that. What happens around the world politically, I cannot speak for that. But I am here with all of these women, including our attorneys, and I would be more than happy to meet with him, and I will meet him halfway.
So they say this, and they say a whole bunch of other things, but they say this. They reiterate over and over again, it's not a hoax. Multiple people invite the president for personal conversations with them so they could explain their experiences. We'll play a little bit more, and then you'll get to hear what the president said at the same exact time that the victims of Jeffrey Epstein were speaking on the Capitol near him.
President Trump, you have so much influence and power in this situation. Please use that influence and power to help us, because we need it now and this country needs it now.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
So it's a Democrat hoax because it's trying to distract from what's really going on, because he's already released all these documents. Mind you, the documents that he must be referring to is either the Epstein binders that had nothing in them at the start of the administration, and even Pam Bondi kind of acknowledges that, you know, they dropped the ball a little bit, or he's referring to the recent drop of documents, which was a bunch of information we either already knew or was tons and tons and tons of blacked out text that we can only wonder what is beneath them, because the House Oversight Committee did not release the uncensored Jeffrey Epstein documents, of course, with the exception of redacted names. When Kash Patel, who became the FBI director, went on the Joe Rogan podcast and he said he was going to release the footage raw and in its completion, he did not. He sent it not raw, it was edited, and it was not in its completion. It was not complete. Again, it was edited. So it was neither raw and it was neither complete. And it was a bunch of different mistakes like this. Pam Bondi saying that she had the list on her desk and then there isn't a list. That can be misinterpretation. That could be bad communication. It could be whatever you want it to be. At the end of the day, they fumbled and stumbled and fucked this up 10 ways from Sunday. And then at the end of it, when people still have questions because they didn't give us any answers, after prominent answers on the campaign trail, he just refers to it as a Democrat hoax. But it's the most well-known sex pest conspiracy It's like it's the most well-known sex pest story in the United States. To just call it a hoax, oh, it's just like the Kennedy situation. The Kennedy situation is a bunch of people think that JFK was killed by the CIA or JFK was killed by X, Y, or Z group, and there's not really much possibly to give. And so whatever you do give is probably not going to be accepted. In this case, we can see the censored documents. We can see the blacked out lines of text of the information that is being determined doesn't need to be released. We know that at least one of the Jeffrey Epstein victims said that Donald Trump used to get bragged about. Now, I don't abide Jeffrey Epstein as one of his like highest profile gets, so to speak. Maybe it's just Jeffrey Epstein talking big. Maybe it's not. But we all deserve to know whether or not our president had a deep relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And if the victims want this type of transparency, then who are we protecting? Who are we protecting? Because the only reference to it has been the victims' names. If the victims themselves are coming out and publicly saying, please release it. Please put it in the public. Please let everyone know what happened to us. Nobody's being protected. So at this point, all we can do is wait for these women to release the names or the discharge petition to go through. Because I don't think the Republicans are going to take action from a leadership position. Mike Johnson's not going to. I don't think Thune or any other Republicans in the Senate are going to. And so it will only be through discharge petition that they'll be forced to take an uncomfortable vote. Besides that, I think the power lies with the victims to name the names that they know. Because I don't think it's going to get out there as long as they stay quiet. You cannot hope that Trump is going to see the light of day and decide that full transparency all of a sudden is needed after he's bent himself into pretzels trying to avoid these documents getting out there. Why? Definitely for such a showman president who earlier in the administration had binders handed out with Epstein's name. They knew the performance of it then. What changed? Why did it change when it got real and it wasn't just election time?
Friends or donors?
In just 2 hours, our discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files garnered 134 signers. We are halfway to 218. Thank you to Representative Boeberts, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Representative Nancy Mace for signing the petition and standing up to the victims. Where are the men? I wonder, Trump called Thomas Massie. And I think he called Thomas Massie because he didn't want to call a woman and say, please stop listening to victims. Like, I think it would be probably a bad look. But I wonder, do you think if it gets that close and he has to call women to try to get them to break rank, he will? I think he will. I don't think that's beneath him. Especially since I think all of those women are women who would probably be best served politically not by going out there and saying Trump attacked us, Trump did this, Trump did that, but by probably just keeping their head down and trying to get through it and deal with the pressure. I think that type of dignified look would look really good on Marjorie Taylor Greene, who doesn't usually wear that color. MTG for releasing the files, lol. Yep. See, that's the promise. That's the problem. They're so audio captured. Even if these people wanted to not, they're gonna get dragged through the mud for it. They want that thing that makes them stand above the mold and keeps their name in the headline so they can keep bringing in those donations. Did you see the question about Epstein working for an intelligence agency? No, I did not. You know what I did see? Oh, let me see if I can pull this up. Now that we're off the Epstein thing for a second. We do need to talk about that for a second. We're gonna have to talk about what happened in Konstantinivka. But I wanted to get did you guys see Nigel Farage came to the United States? He came to the United States for a hearing and probably a meeting with President Trump, because he was asked directly if he was meeting with President Trump and he would not answer, which is either him playing coy to look important, or it's because, well, he was going to meet with President Trump, but he didn't want to say. I wonder if I can find this Nigel Farage segment.
A curd is a curd.
Hey.
I got my granddad's M1 Garand with me. I would be devastated if I lost it in a house fire. My condolences to your guns, Dylan.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. How much, 1 second. I didn't see your name. Toyota Corolla. Well, thank you, Toyota Corolla. I appreciate that. Still not buying a Toyota, but I appreciate that still. I still appreciate it. Okay, where is this? I've got like a few Jeffrey Epstein sections, it seems like. I mean, not Jeffrey Epstein sessions, Nigel Farage sessions. Was that a Freudian slip? Nah, that was just me being stupid. Let me see if I can find this. Jamie Raskin from Maryland really grilled Nigel Farage, and I wanted to watch that segment specifically because it was very interesting. Oh, also, Thomas Massey responded to it being called a hoax. He called it disrespectful. So Thomas Massey has been willing to push some back on the president. Not a lot, mind you, but some. See if I can get this Jamie Raskin. Here it is. Let's put this up on screen. We still debating? No, not right now. We were, though. So Nigel Farage came to Congress. He was stopping by in the United States. There was another section, if you're wondering why Nigel Farage is before Congress. There is another section where Mouskowitz asks him about what his plans is in the United States, because, you know, they're curious what you're doing here exactly, considering Nigel Farage is an elected British MP with his own party in the United Kingdom, and at the same time that this hearing was happening, the Parliament in the United Kingdom was operating, and so he could be there, he could be testifying, he could be doing his job there. Why are you here? And he refused to really answer any details about it. It was a little strange, but I mean, you know, he's a private citizen. He has the right.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Farage, thanks for being here, coming across the pond. I'm sorry to hear you're leaving the hearing early.
Well, it's not a question of leaving the hearing early, but I do have other things to do. Yes.
Oh, where are you going?
I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. Where are you going?
It's not lunch, I promise you.
It's not lunch. You're not going to have lunch.
I don't think so, no.
No lunch.
Sad, isn't
You're
it?
meeting with the president?
I can't remember what the schedule is. It's possible.
You can't remember if you're meeting with the president.
I'm being very polite, and I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing this afternoon, but I can assure you that...
But there's the free speech hearing. You're not going to tell me what you're doing this afternoon?
Free speech is one thing. Discretion's quite another, too.
Okay. All right, so you're leaving to have lunch with the president. So, Mr. Farage, I have a question. Have you heard?
Anyway, whatever else he's doing in the United States, I do not know, but he is in the United States. He's testifying before Congress, and he got a lot of pressure from Jamie Raskin. Some of it very good, some of it kind of weak. But the main thing that I took away from it is that at the end of it, especially anything related to Ukraine, when he pressured Nigel Farage and called him like a Putin-loving ex-wife, that really made him uncomfortable. I think in his mind, he could already see the headlines on British tabloids as Nigel Farage torn apart on the issue of Ukraine. And the reason I bring that up specifically is the British public are one of the most pro-Ukraine publics in all of Europe. When you poll them, they're viciously pro-Ukraine when it comes to the British public. Government action is sometimes slower, but when it comes to the public is very, very, very supportive. So supportive that Nigel Farage has gone from saying that Putin is one of the leaders that he most admires to saying that Ukraine's place is inside the bounds of NATO and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It is just that he has accepted the political dimensions as they are, that it's not changing. The British public support Ukraine. And so when he brings up his past statements about Putin, he probably looks the most bothered, honestly. But I wanted to check this out because Jamie Raskin has a few duds here, but he also makes Nigel Farage take some real pressure. Check it out.
Protectors of free speech, but they only want to protect speech they...
Representative from Maryland, by the way. Just want to throw that out there.
Protectors of free speech, but they only want to protect speech they agree with. In the UK, Mr. Farage is openly promoting the abolition of the Human Rights Act of 1998 to be replaced with a British Bill of Rights that limits the right of free speech to British citizens and legally sanctioned residents. He complains that racist threats against immigrants are not protected free speech, while he proposes to strip migrants, tourists, and perhaps even visiting American congresspeople of any free speech rights at all. I had my own close encounter with that when Mr. Farage and his team presented for more than an hour in a conversation we had about free speech. And after 3 minutes of talking, he cut me off and terminated the meeting because he didn't like what I was saying. That's the kind of free speech he's committed to. There is a free speech crisis in America today, but there's no free speech crisis in Britain. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has not shut down GB News, where Mr. Farage has his own show, just because Mr. Farage has used his airtime to call for banning peaceful protests that he disagrees with. No one has stopped him from going on Russian TV 17 times and saying also and repeating that the one world political leader he most admired was Vladimir Putin, even though Vladimir Putin is a war criminal and a dictator who has regularly interfered in other countries' democratic elections. No one has stopped Mr. Farage from parroting Putin's absurd talking points like...
You see, before when you're looking at Farage, he looked like, he was reacting to it. He was making facial expressions, giving like the raised eyebrow, giving like the duck lips. And immediately he brings up the fact that before the 2022 invasion, Nigel Farage used to have sing a different tune on Vladimir Putin before it became politically inconvenient. And it took some time for the invasion to really set in and public sentiment in Britain to really take hold before he really committed for, Ukraine should be in NATO, XYZ, once it was impossible to run away from the political reality. And so I really think this one makes him uncomfortable because this is one of the things that can help to keep his party still in political irrelevance. His party is Reform, by the way. He's no longer in UKIP for anybody who might have, not seen any Brit bongers in the last decade.
When Farage claimed that NATO, the U.S. and Britain provoked this war in Ukraine, for a man who fashions himself as some kind of a free speech martyr, Mr. Farage seems most at home with the autocrats and dictators of the world who are crushing freedom on earth. Mr. Farage wants to get rid of the Online Safety Act in his country, a law shepherded by the Conservative Party.
Mind you, the Online Safety Act is also very divisive, and it's gotten a lot of critique for exactly what the government should be involved in when it comes to content moderation on the internet, and whether or not it should be basically carding people for accessing content, and how a lot of websites are just not providing the content period. It's a little bit, it's more complicated than the way that Jamie Raskin puts it. But I mean, he's drive-by British politics quick, so he's trying to stuff in all of his talking points.
And implemented by the Labour Party, which bans child pornography online, protects children from harmful content, forbids non-consensual pornography and other unlawful content. He should go and advance the positions he's taking here in Congress today in Parliament, which is meeting today, if he's serious about it. To the people of UK who think this Putin-loving free speech imposter and Trump sycophant will protect freedom in your country, come on over to America and see what Trump and MAGA are doing to destroy our freedom, kidnap college students off the street, ban books from our libraries, militarize our police and unleash them against our communities, take over our universities, wreck our professional civil service, and turn the government into a money-making machine for Trump and his family. You might think twice before you let Mr. Farage make Britain great again.
By the end of it, he's the thinking man, Farage. Started with the duck lips, ended with the thinking man pose. Contemplating Mr. Raskin's words. He did leave early. Now, of course, I will say that this free speech hearing did go on for quite some time. And so, you know, these hearings are not a short process. They're for hours and hours and hours. But Raskin did note that after Farage saying that he had to leave early, he did immediately get interviewed by Great Britain News outside right after his time in the committee, which Jamie Raskin noted for all of the committee's attendance.
It would be consistent with the rules and the practice for a committee for us to send someone inviting to come back, because I think we have 5 or 6 members who haven't questioned yet. Would that be all right if we sent someone to go alert me that there's still members waiting to do their questions, just out of courtesy and respect for our colleagues?
So what Jamie Raskin is asking, he's asking the ranking member to, now that we know that Nigel Farage is just outside taking questions from Great Britain News, considering that there's 4 or 6 members on the committee who didn't even get to ask their first round of questions before he ducked out of there. Don't know why you would agree to be on a committee if you're not going to, you know, be there for the people who are going to ask you questions. That's the whole fucking point of a committee. Just wanted a quick media appearance. He says he's asking if we could get the staff to go get him while he's doing the interview and bring him back in to answer more questions.
We'll make note that the witness has appeared voluntarily, he has left voluntarily, but in terms of going and asking him to come back, no objection there.
Okay, if we could do it, if we could find him. I'd like to submit for the record this clip from GB News. British free speech under threat. Nigel Farage says UK is an authoritarian state like North Korea.
UK is an authoritarian state like North Korea. Why not? Why not? Why not? Hey, Nicosaurus, thank you so much for the raid of 83. Good to see you streaming. It's been a while since I've kicked into one of your streams. Hope you're doing good. Hope your streams are going well. Look, I would say that Nicosaurus is my favorite Catwoman VTuber on the internet. Now, I would also clarify that I don't know any other Catwoman VTubers on the internet, but I still think it's an achievement. The raid of 83 sounds like a historical event. It does sound like a historical event. It also sounds like the amount of people who did the raid. So it could be two, it could either be an ancient historical event or a modern one. In 1883, the Gang of 83, you know, something like that. Okay, so we're actually, well, I'm going to welcome everybody in here. I do war coverage. I'm a journalist who covers the war in Ukraine. I also talk about American domestic news. I'm heading back to Ukraine in about like 2 weeks, so I can go back to filming on the front line. And I hope you have a good night, Nico. But I wanted to cover one last story before we clocked up tonight, and I hung up the gloves before going off and continuing to work on my articles and my scripts, because we're getting ready for the documentary release. The documentary is being released this month, the Big Pokrov's documentary. But I wanted to check into the area where I'm going to be going back to first, because I really want to film back in Konstantinivka. I spent some time there. I must have gone back in and out of Konstantinivka 6, 7, 8. No, it was like roughly a dozen times. going in and out with aid workers, water delivery, evacuation teams. And I want to go back there and I want to film more. I filmed with drone teams to the south of Konstantinivka here, right? Which is a pretty major hotspot. And you can see a lot of the fighting in Teresk from there. And you could strangely, I felt like you could see another, what was the other? You can see another city in a different direction, but you could also see Teresk. You can most clearly see Teresk from that position. You could see it burning from there. But I want to film more with artillery teams. I want to film more with other teams. I want to get more filming so I can make a documentary about the Battle of Konstantinivka, not just like a one chapter about it. Just like my last documentary I worked on, and which is currently being produced, and I'm excited to put it out on for Pokrovsk. Now, I wanted to say that the reason I want to do this is that the civilians there are dealing with hell, but they're incredibly stubborn, and a lot of them are not leaving. They really, 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 really love their home. So I wanted to just bring attention to a story that just happened where there was a bombing there that hit a market and it killed 9, wounded 6 others. And these types of bombings, to be quite sad, but honest, happen quite regularly. These types of attacks are quite regular. They were regular in Pokrovsk until the majority of the civilians left. And even still, people are dying and getting buried in their front yards. In this case, it was a corner store. Somewhere you go to buy water. Somewhere you go to buy a pack of smokes. Somewhere you go to, just pick up a snack for your kid or to, get maybe a beer. It was a corner store. A lot of corner stores that I visited have been bombed. I remember being in Hasan, visiting a corner store that was bombed by a FPV, wounded a bunch of people, and I could see the shrapnel wounds in the vans that were left over by the local shopkeep. It was only a wall, which is very symbolic in Kherson. It was a wall of watermelon set up by the market that actually saved the majority of the civilians. But in this case, there was no symbolic wall protecting them, and many did die. Konstantinivka, being in the position it is facing the same crisis that Pokrovsk is, and that is a 3-way encirclement. They are getting pressed from the south, they are getting pressed by the west, and they are getting pressed by the east. Now, their places that are most difficult are the south and the east. You can see from its direction that the east has most solidly got set around on its side, and the south, of course, it's covered on all sides. The west, it's actually having the most trouble. The Russians are trying to establish this 3-way encirclement. And you can see that they're attacking in a direction so that they can take these settlements to the west of the city so they can press it from the sides. If they can achieve that, if they can take Stefinka or Dovabalka, if they can take these locations, that's going to be really, really, really bad for Konstantinivka. And so I want to get there as soon as possible and get back to filming because I want to cover the stories of not only all the humans that are leaving, because last time I was in Konstantinivka, the majority of the people I saw there were elderly people. Older, elderly people who are pensioners, who love their home and didn't want to leave, some of whom were on the street, literally street sweeping as shells were falling. These are people who love their home in a radical sense. And I don't say that negatively. I just say that to be upfront. They love it in a radical sense. And they will do many, many, many things to defend it, including putting themselves in harm's way. And so I'm really worried about those people. And I'm worried about the people who didn't leave because they don't feel like they have the money to live in Kiev. And I'm worried about the people who didn't leave for really any reason. Because the Russian bombing is not stopping, and it's only going to get worse as the Russians try to press on and take more positions to the west and to the south. But I just wanted to cover this store attack because it was particularly brutal. Even if these types of attacks are not uncommon. Definitely in Okos across the country. Chat, the evacuations are already mandatory, but mandatory does not mean forced. Yeah, that's the thing. If they say evacuate, that's all they can do. They can say evacuate. They can go to these houses and tell you to evacuate. But they are not the Ukrainian authorities cannot point a gun at a babushka and say, you will evacuate. there will be times where they'll come across and say, look, if you do not evacuate, you will die. And depending on how they communicate with you, maybe that will change your mind. Like, for example, when that island had a bridge blow up on the Kherson axis, most people were told, if you do not leave, you will die. This is about to become hell on earth, which is saying a lot if you've already been living in Kherson for a few years. So they cannot force you to leave. You can, they can only tell you that shit's about to go down. And I think it's a good idea if you go visit your family for an extended period of time. That's really all they can do. Mind you, this is not just a risk to, when people stay, it's not just a risk to the people. Though, of course, you understand why people want to stay in their homes. It's also a risk to military personnel. If you're an artillery team and you know there's a babushka living in the house next to you, you're going to think about that when you operate. You're going to think about that if you need to go jump and hide if you guys get targeted. Oh, am I going to jump in the house with the grandma? I don't want to bring this bomb to grandma's house. And it's going to restrict your movement. It's going to restrict the places you can go and fire responsibly. It's a problem. Dylan, have you seen this and this? I don't know what it is. Let me check it. Russia is finalizing its strategic regrouping, having redeployed forces from the Sunni and Kherson. Its offensive will likely enter a new phase soon. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they redeployed some forces, but that's also because they've been taking a lot of losses, like a lot of losses. I saw this one road in Pokrovsk where the burnt out vehicles just were almost like stacked. There were so many. I don't want to get into too much detail. I was thinking about looking it up, but I realized it's probably TOS on Twitch because there was quite a few bodies. Point is, though, it could be that they'll be able to manufacture enough infantry to launch a big new offensive, but odds are, in my mind, that they're going to keep amassing infantry to keep up the pressure that they've been putting, and that advances are likely to continue as they are, not with the Russians having gigantic breakthroughs, but with the Russians slowly crawling forward as they are now. And due to how drones have developed, it has just made that type of crawling forward more likely. Russians did a large regroupment of their forces, did the largest regroupment of their forces since Kiev 2022. They prepared a lot of forces and ready for the last final battle for the rest of the Donetsk Oblast. We see again the huge use of AFV columns, and it will be very bloody for both sides soon. Big AFV columns is target practice for drones. I mean, if it works, yes, you can break through, but they almost never work, or the progress that made is minimal for the losses incurred. The Russians have seemingly had more success with infantry crawling forward with thermal blankets than they had with the big AFV columns. I mean, the last offensive operation that had that type of success was the Kursk operation. And that was, well, that was a operation in of itself to cover up troop movement, to jam the Russian drones and advance of them launching the attack, uprooting the border defenses. And it's not like they don't know they're coming into the Donetsk region. Kursk, they didn't know they were coming. In fact, they had made the Russians think that the troop buildup that was visible was an expectation of a Russian offensive in Kursk, into Sumy, which eventually there was a Russian offensive into Sumy. So, I mean, it's not so crazy they believed it. Cirrus is a slime cat girl VTuber. Just thought I should help clarify. Okay. I mean, I didn't mean to misslime her. Okay, I think that's everything. I don't really have anything else I want to touch on right now. The only last thing I think we could maybe talk about is just this very ridiculous hearing segment in Congress from Senator Kennedy. I don't know if you all saw this. Let me bring it up. This is a photograph of the alien from the movie Alien. This is what you could end up looking like if you eat some of the raw frozen shrimp being sent to the United States by other countries.
Mr. President, this is a photograph of the alien from the movie Alien. This is what you could end up looking like if you eat some of the raw frozen shrimp being sent to the United States by other countries. Now, let me tell you what I'm talking about. In late August, the FDA found that raw frozen shrimp from Indonesia was being sold in Walmart, specifically in Walmart stores in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Missouri, Mississippi, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania.
So something I noticed is it's mostly non-coastal states that are getting the bad seafood.
Texas and West Virginia. It was being sold under the Walmart label called the Great Value label. If you eat it, how could you end up looking like the alien in the Alien? Because the shrimp was radioactive. I kid you not. It had a radioactive isotope in it called cesium-137. It'll kill you. Even if it doesn't turn you into the alien if you eat this stuff, I guarantee you'll grow an extra ear. That was bad enough. Obviously, the FDA issued a recall. A few days later, it happened again. The FDA and NOAA, which I'll talk about in a second, found that there were 26,460.
What's crazy is he's talking about like a important food issue about like radioactive, like, hey, you know, the healthy seafood getting to consumers. Like, we got to make sure that we're getting on top of things. But he's doing it in such a folksy and ridiculous way that it's impossible to even this is meant to like catch attention and then like invoke dread. But he's talking about radiation in such like a Wile E. Coyote, Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes style. And the way that, oh, you grow an extra ear, it doesn't really inspire much panic. It doesn't really inspire much dread. I feel like a foghorn leghorn is you know, yanking my chain a bit.
Packages of shrimp cocktail and 18,000 bags of frozen cooked shrimp being sold once again at Walmart and at Kroger's throughout the United States, containing the same radioactive isotope. How could this happen in America? This is unconscionable. I'll tell you how. Because that shrimp from other countries, which don't abide by the same rules that we abide by in America, which if you eat it will may turn you into the alien, and at a minimum will cause you to grow an extra ear. It's not being inspected. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be inspected by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. We call it NOAA. It's part of the Department of Commerce. And yes, they're inspecting some of it, about 1%. On a good day, 2%. The United Kingdom inspects 50% of the foreign seafood coming into its nation. Even China does a better job than the United States of America. This is unconscionable, Mr. President. There is no excuse for it. There is no excuse for it. This.
See, on one hand, you could look at it like, this is ridiculous nonsense. The way he's presented it, he's taken a serious issue. He's made it cartoony. It's hard to take it seriously the way he's presenting it. He's really thinks that at least grow an extra ear line is funny. He can't stop saying it. But the other side of it is, would I have watched Senator Kennedy talk about it if he talked about it in a perfectly straightforward way and didn't bring out the alien poster? Probably not. So take from that what you will. Wouldn't an extra ear be good? I guess it's where the ear is, you know? I imagine it would be annoying to clean out, you know, more earwax. Where would you want an extra ear? Where are you like this? You know, I just don't have enough earage. I just wish I could hear better in this direction. Where did he get the print? I'm pretty sure they have like something in the Capitol or like a print shop or something. Because I remember when I was working in the Maryland General Assembly, in order to get like document stuff, we had to go to a certain office to the print side where they would print out documents and such. But this is a big billboard. I mean, a billboard, but plasterboard. So I don't know. I do not know. I do not know. Also, Trump did recently suggest sending the National Guard to New Orleans. So I don't know if we don't really need to watch this full CNN segment, like covering all the details of it. The only point is he's talked about Baltimore. He's talked about Chicago. He's talked about Detroit. He, of course, has already sent the troops to D.C. He's sent the troops in a different fashion to L.A. And now New Orleans is also on the list. Rip Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras might not have the same vibe as before. Okay. I think with that, we're going to wrap up stream. Thank you, Nico, for rating, and everybody that came over and stayed a second. Hopefully you'll come by for another stream in the near future, where we're going to be giving more updates about what's going on in Ukraine, world events, world news, particularly focusing on, we're going to be talking about the Thailand-Cambodia border crisis before the week's end, probably revisit what's going on in Sudan and Myanmar this Friday, after we get some more updates from some of the local press and I talk to my contact in the Thai government about where the position is now, how they see the conflict. Besides that, I hope you guys follow my Instagram, where I'm going to be posting pictures of my time on the ground in Ukraine, Dylan Burns TV. You can also follow me on Twitter, DylanBurns1776, for my hot takes about the war, about daily events, about me being doxxed, whatever it could be. If you want to join my Discord, it's !Discord in chat, or you can scroll beneath today's stream and click the Discord link there. If you want to support today's stream, if you want to make sure that I can do more streams like this in the future, or do more embeds on the ground in Ukraine, you can go to DylanBurns.tv and donate or subscribe to become a recurring supporter of freelance war journalism, something that's desperately needed in this time and age. Also, you can support me on Dylan Burns TV on Patreon, or drop your Amazon Prime and Twitch chat at absolutely no cost to you. That is zero cost to your pocketbook while supporting journalism for free. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good one. I hope to see you guys tomorrow, and you guys have a good rest of your night. Good night, and good luck, everyone.